Alright, in these videos, I'm just gonna show some decks I won with. This is before the final boss, because that's when you can grab a screenshot of your deck, or look at your deck. So I haven't actually beaten the final boss yet. If I don't beat the final boss, we won't show this, but the final boss tends not to be where runs lose. Um, to basically map out how the run worked, this run, I'll just give a quick talk over each run and kind of what choices were important. I started with the null deck, and there was a sacrificial altar right in front of me at the start. I took the wolf and the pronghorn. There weren't very valuable abilities early, but the wolf is a high power card. Anything with 3 power that you can put out, keep in mind with these 3 zero cost cards, it's easy to pay the more expensive stuff you can get on the board. Put Bifurcated Strike on a wolf, and that immediately does two things. One, you can one shot many fights. It now can do 6 damage. I don't like the Pronghorn's move around ability. I would have rather the Mantis, but the wolf is a very good card to start putting on multi damaging abilities. And now, if I get it in my opening hand, I'll always have the sacrifices, or almost always, at least early game, I will always have the sacrifices and be able to one shot many fights if I get Wolf early, which I'm likely to do because my opening hand is going to be an Aqua Squirrel and 3 of the other cards, and there are 4 cards. Um, it also means as long as I have a little more damage output, I am likely to be able to take on a boss. So I got a campfire early that got the wolf to 4, which was nice but not mandatory. And I picked up an item that would clear a lane. I think it was a tourney clock. And I went to an item booth and got a pack rat. And that's 5 damage, right? The wolf and the pack rat. I don't remember. I think the first boss was the angler, which was nice. I probably had some other damage by then. I'm not sure though, but it meant I could stall for a while, put out the Geck to do slight damage, sack Aqua Swirls until I was ready to get Wolf and Pack Rat, put them in the right lanes, have an Aqua Squirrel to stop the Wolf from moving away, use the tourney clock to open the lane on the left, and have the Pack Rat and the Wolf hit that lane with the Aqua Squirrel making sure the Wolf didn't move out of the way. So I was probably pretty lucky to get that as the first boss because it let me set up. But I'm sure I had some other cards at that point. I think I had picked up a beehive, so tiny bits of damage, not really relevant to the way to beat the boss. Later, I got the dire wolf, and eventually I put the corpse maggot on it and gave it +1 at some point. I was not particularly excited to put +1 attack on the dire wolf because I was sort of hoping to get something like another wolf and put a double strike on that, move that from the dire wolf. But this is a deck that can sustain 3 cost cards, right? You can play them. You have the rabbit, you have the tadpole, you have the Geck, we have a beehive. That's very nice. Eventually, the pack rat item went on the beehive, and later I ended up There were so many mycologists on this run. I guess just 2, but ended up combining those. I picked up some grizzlies, combined those. Just gave it Mantis Bifurcated Strike at the very end. That wasn't during the run. Um, I went to Goobert and doubled my wolf, and it very kindly gave me even better abilities, got rid of the stupid movement ability. Picked up a black goat fairly late. I don't know if I've ever actually had it in my hand, but that gives another way to get out the dire wolf or the grizzly. That tadpole was from a cave. That's obviously a beautiful card. I was thinking of mycologisting the tadpoles together just because the other tadpole is not very good, but being able to grab items for 0 cost and give a slight boost to things next to it is obviously delightful. The alpha came late, haven't played it. The pronghorn I got from the third to final boss, or the third boss, so I just got it, haven't played it, don't want it. Was thinking of sacrificing it, but decided to put a mantis on the grizzly instead. And the adder was a card I picked up at the cave. It's a pretty terrible first ability for the adder because the adder will pick something off and then you can kind of hope it has some way to sit there or survive, but if it jumps in front of things, it never will. So that you could like sacrifice it to something else, use it as fodder after it gets its kill. So not a very good adder from the cave, but my other cave result, the tadpole, was really nice. But most of this has been based on I have the wolf, I have the beehive, and I have a couple big targets that are worthwhile. Like the grizzly is an 8/12, that's a big target. The dire wolf is a big target, and the wolves have done most of the work. So most of this was wolf and pronghorn at the start, and then a little luck with kind of items and what boss I got to get through map 1, and then I've pretty much been rolling ever since. I had a very lucky World 3 because I have the bleach for the final boss to make an easy final boss, and I also never faced like a double strike or bifurcated strike vulture or anything like that. Uh, though honestly, I think it would have been fine because basically every hand I got, I could just turn one wolf or turn one grizzly or something kind of thing. There was one fight that was a little trickier. I had two tourney clocks for safety, and I had to use both to steal cards to get out the grizzly to win the fight. Otherwise, I was dead, which is why I was then low on items. But this deck is good item generation. So that's about it. I think it's a very strong deck. It wasn't really tested in World 3, but I liked the Wolf Pronghorn grab at the start, especially knowing there was a sacrificial altar immediately. All right. Yeah, 6 minutes per to talk through some hands. I'll try to be quicker on the next ones, but this is just going to be a bunch of decks that beat the final boss in Skullstorm.
All right, this is my second Skullstorm of this run with the Geck deck. Built quite different. I got a bunch of +1 campfires early, and I doubled up on the rabbit because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do +1 or +2 on the Geck, but on the rabbit it feels like a win either way. If I get a 2-1 for 0, that's great. If it dies, that's fine too. So I often start with the rabbit. I'm not sure that's correct, but then I got another one, and I went +2 on the Geck because I really didn't have an answer for the first boss. But then I lucked into a good item combo. I think I got Fan plus Beat Bleach, and then it was clear with my 3-1 Geck that like I could just do enough damage to get through. I later picked up a cockroach, and unkillable Geck with boosted attack is a fantastic strategy. From there, you can kind of just play out your hand. I happened to get two porcupines. I combined them. I added a little defense so they could last longer against grizzlies. I didn't get good items for the second boss, but I had things like the porcupine and the skink that could block lanes of damage for a while the Geck slowly worked through its lane. Um, Wolf is just a card that can do some damage. The rest of the deck hasn't mattered that much. I just put items on the Warren. I've barely played the Warren. This wolf is pretty cool. I got it from the cave. I also got this mealworm from the cave. That hasn't done anything. But the wolf can clear out a lane of bears on its own because it attacks turn 1 and kills a bear. Turn 2, a bear hits it, kills it, but it does 1 damage to it, and that 1 damage has Death Touch. So it's a fun combination, Porcupine plus Death Touch. I just put item on the Warren, but I also could have put Adder on the Porcupine, which would have been a very cool combo and similar to the Wolf. And in retrospect, now I wish I had done that because it would be fun to have a double kind of like Death Touch prickly deck. And I got to Goober for another Geck, has a different ability. I'd actually rather have Annoying because it dies anyway and I'm sacking it all the time rather than an annoying movement ability. Normally when Annoying is replaced, it's helpful. But either way, I have two nice Gecks. I just got a cat from beating the boss. I'm not sure why Rat King is listed last. They always change the order oddly on the last card. But basically the reason this deck is good is because of the Geck. The wolf is a fun oddity. If I'd ever seen a mycologist this run, I would have combined the wolves and felt really pumped about that big wolf. The skink, a 2-2 skink, like you give it a little plus to power, that's great. I'm very late, so it's been in effect for like one fight. I got an unkillable reptile totem, so the Gecks don't actually need to have unkillable or undying, whatever it's called. But the skink getting it, the adder getting it, these are kind of nice. Not a huge change. The tadpole getting it is very nice because I sacked a black goat onto the tadpole. I didn't take anything expensive, but it gets the wolf out quicker. It's just basically if you get an unkillable Geck and other resources, such that if you don't start with the unkillable Geck, your deck has chances to live. You have a pretty good deck. So this is another very standard plan. Usually going for an unkillable Geck, like if you see a cockroach from the opening, and decide I'm going to boost my Geck and go unkillable, I find those decks often don't have the power to beat the first boss. You don't have a thick enough deck to last long enough that your Geck can work through it, and you get in trouble. I more often find I end up in this deck from a path like this, where I put +2 power on the Geck early because I'm willing to take the risk because I either think my outs are elsewhere, like a wolf or something else to beat the bears, or for whatever reason I just think it's worth taking the risk. My deck's not going great, and then I land unkillable on it at some later point, and suddenly that is the game plan. That is the way the deck is winning. And so if you do take a cockroach in the opening, you really like the ideal opening that starts with a cockroach would be cockroach plus something like a dire wolf or a grizzly, something that's very close to being able to take out the bears itself, because your Geck is going to be fantastic, but it is not yet a full answer. And you're probably not going to have a thick enough deck that it can exist as a full answer to the first boss, or even a path to beat the first boss. So I love unkillable Gecks. This deck is obviously great, but it comes with some caveats about how to build towards it. All right, Geck deck to the final boss, number 3. This one pretty similar, I think, to the first one in some ways. I tried to get some useful cards, like I got my Beehive up to an 04. I like the Beehive. My Geck has Fecundity, can make more sacrifices. Like, this is just a random ability moved onto the Tadpole to get rid of the stupid 2/3 Bloodhound. I got this at a cave, not too exciting. I got this at a cave, also not exciting. It was just funny to get multiple Tadpoles. Cuckoos helped block some lanes. I just got one of them just from beating the third boss. No, I had 2 pelts in my deck because I had to go to the Trapper twice, once to get the skinning knife and once because I needed something behind it. Items, or maybe it was Goobert when I doubled the Grizzly. Anyways, I ended up with 2 pelts in my deck, and so I got rid of them at the end. I got a cockroach at the very end, which is nice because I make a lot of bones, like beehives, lots of big things to sacrifice to. Don't always have bones. This Mantis I buffed early. Again, the card that's put last is always a card I did not get at the very end. But really nice Mantis, one-shot some fights. It was a 1/1, and I thought my deck was good, so I thought, let's take a risk and pump it twice, because if I pump it once, I don't know if it's a difference maker, but if I pump it twice, that might be some free fights. And I think it was worth that risk. There are some decks where you need your Mantis, but the Mantis was not really my win condition here. It's kind of blockade the board with a Cuckoo. My Ant Queen is buffed to an 07 because I was trying to get rid of it, but it instead just took the buffs. The Elk I got from the third boss. I didn't mean to have the Elk here. I would not have it if I didn't have to. But the main thing was basically I went to the initial person and he had a Grizzly and a Mantis, or I got the Mantis almost immediately. And I put the Grizzly on the Mantis. I also got 2+1s on attack to get it up to a 6/6. At some point, I gooberted it, got a 6/4 as well, and combined them. And that has been the main force. I'm actually a little anxious about the final boss. I have an Hourglass for security, but I can't really put out the Grizzly until the final form. I don't have item generation, so I have to actually be able to do 80 damage. And if you look at the deck, it's really low damage outputting. So I basically have to hold off and get the Dire Wolf to punch through some damage, and then the Grizzly can take the final form, right? It does 24 damage a turn. That takes 4 turns. It will kill before it. But I can't risk putting it out on a turn where it doesn't end the second phase. And the Grizzly has multiple times, including versus the third boss, which was pretty scary, been on the exact bottom of my deck. And so this is a one a little over reliant on getting exactly the Grizzly. I don't think I filled the deck out that well. I'm not that excited about any other cards in the deck. Like, the Geck is fine, but it doesn't live. The Mantis is very good. But outside of, like, my 3 best cards this run were, like, Grizzly is MVP by miles. And as I say with the Geck deck, you have 3 really cheap guards. You can afford to play something expensive. You're going to have a lot of stuff to sacrifice. And you got to get something that can beat the Grizzly wall. And I beat the Grizzly wall with an even stronger Grizzly. But the Mantis, probably the second best card, maybe the Beehive. I think without the Mantis, I probably would have lost some early fights, or some late fights, where I just drew it early, so the fight was over immediately, but it might have been a dangerous fight. Because doing 6 is obviously a huge breakpoint for just ending fights immediately. The Beehive was good. An 04 Beehive is good. I didn't face many flyers. Sometimes an 04 Beehive is not good. This was a game it was good. The Geck was good. The Cuckoo was good. The Dire Wolf was useful just for, like, I need a little damage, not from the Grizzly. I just, sometimes you have to do damage with other cards. And this final fight is going to be an interesting version of that. I think of the 3 hands I've shown here, or decks I've shown here, this is the one I'm most likely to not beat the final boss. But I still think it should be pretty safe with an Hourglass of security and, enough cards that can chip away a little damage as long as I don't get really behind at the start. I think that's the scary point. But if I make it to the ship, I can just delay until I get the grizzly, even if I haven't gotten the grizzly. So I'm not worried about the ship. I'm not really worried about phase 2. I'm worried about phase 1. Because phase 1, sometimes you just take a couple damage here and there from the 2/1/8s, and then suddenly a 2/3 flyer comes down and you lose. And I think that's the most common way to lose it, and I'm a little worried about that. But if you see this, it means I did prevail. Alright, this was a goofy fun deck using the Bones deck. You know, um, kept the Coyote because it's fine, got rid of the Raccoon, Dire Wolf Pup, you give it +1 so that when it becomes a Dire Wolf, it's a 3/5, and then if you have a kill item, it can beat the Grizzlies. Standard stuff. Grabbed a Skink early, powered it up 1 so that its tail would have 1 power, then got another Skink and got to combine them. Grabbed a Corpse Maggot so I could find something big and give it to that, never connected it with anything. Grabbed a Cockroach, which I meant to put on the Skink, but I got no sacrificial altars. Grabbed a Cuckoo, had some other 1-drops that were pretty bad I eventually got rid of. This Rabbit Pelt, the stupid Bullfrog, this deck doesn't look very good. But there's a few things about it that appeal. One is, I got this Black Goat off a cave, and obviously this is an incredible card. I also sacrificed another Black Goat to the Bone God, so I have a million bones every game, which makes it easier to just play the Cockroach or the Corpse Maggot or the Alpha or the Opossum. Like, I don't run out of bones. The deck is really good on that front, so it was easy to take a bunch of bones cards that make the deck maybe look weaker, but are in fact quite strong. The Black Goat means I can draw into and play whatever I need. But the real big things are, one, I ended up getting a canine token that gives all my canines the Beehive ability. I was pretty hyped about this. It actually has made very little difference, but as you can see here, I have a lot of canines: Dire Wolf Pup, Coyote, Wolf Cub, Alpha. So, seems good. But the real difference maker, the reason this deck has done well, is because I got this Ant Queen off the cave, this 0/3 Ant Queen, with the Corpse Maggot ability and Fecundity, so it jumps into play when something dies and gives you another one, which will jump into play when the next thing dies. And I multiple time had dire wolves coming at me, could get one of these in front of them, it could, or put something in front of it, it would die from the first hit, Ant Queen would come in, survive the second hit, and put me in good shape. And then I got somehow another Ant Queen. Oh, I got it off the Gold's pick. Off the Gold's pick, I got an Ant Queen with Death Touch, and that was just kind of goofy. I thought about getting rid of it at one point, but I ended up combining them into Mycologist, so I have this Ant Queen that, anything I put down and dies, it comes replaces. It has 6 toughness, it has Death Touch, so it kills whatever's in front of it. It makes another one, so it can block up 2 squares. It fills my hand with ants, and then I got 2 Goobers, so I made 2 more. So this one has 8 health, and this one has back to 6 health, because I copied the first time and was lucky to get 8, and was unlucky the second to drop down to 6. But this card's amazing, and if it's in my hand, I basically can't lose. So this is one of those games where I did the standard things with this deck, but I was not getting it, I was not pulling it off, right? I had upped the Direwolf enough that I could get past the first map and get onto map 2, but the kind of core stuff you tend to do with this deck of try to, get rid of the raccoon so you can abuse Fair Hand Mechanic. I'm not remotely close to abusing Fair Hand Mechanic. Get that Direwolf Pup some protection so it can land on the board. There were so many games I had it in my hand and just couldn't play it because the board was filled and it would just die anywhere it came down because it has Annoying. Have something really good as your 1-drop for Fair Hand Mechanic. Nope, don't have that. Start taking lots of 2 and 3 drops because you don't want to screw with Fair Hand Mechanic. Nope, I did not do that. This ended up being a quite weird run, but I've never and will never have an Ant Queen this good. And basically, if I draw one of my 3 Ant Queens, or Black Goat, I just can't lose the game. They clear the board so quickly, they have enough life, they do not die, they make 2 each, so I really have 6 of these monstrosities in my deck. It's going to be a pain to whittle down the final boss, but this deck has come through as a very powerful deck, though I am a little worried about doing the 80 damage. But the other thing is, each of these Ant Queens lands another Ant Queen and lands 2 of the little guys, so that they can do 16, right? Between the 4 of those cards, that's 16 damage. 2 of which you don't have to pay for the costs of, 2 of which only cost 1. So this was a really fun deck to use, and I got really lucky with caves. But that's one of the reasons that you can like play a deck like this is you get +1 attack on the direwolf pup, you grab 1 kill item, you're able to beat the first boss, and you reach world 2, and you don't necessarily have the cleanest deck. I had a pretty promising deck at that point. Like I had a +1 skink, I had a corpse maggot, so I could take a high cost card. I think I got the cockroach soon after that. That was really promising. But then the rest of the cards I saw from normal tiles added up to nothing. But I got something crazy broken from a cave, and that just adds huge upside. And I think people that avoid caves are making a big mistake, though it can be really tough if you're going for fair hand mechanic. But so far, every deck I've done in these videos has not been using fair hand mechanic, and I've really enjoyed not using it. And I haven't gotten screwed yet on double strike vultures or anything like that on any of my good runs. I've lost a lot of runs in between doing these, but none of the decks that really felt promising ended up dying to those. They all had tools to survive. If I was going to pick the MVPs of this deck, obviously Ant Queen is far and away MVP. Direwolf Pup was just really important for beating the first boss. It hasn't been useful since. It's often been just too costly and I can't put it on the board. Skink is obviously nice. I only just buffed it, so I've not gotten to play it as a 3-4. I only just hit the mycologist, but obviously even a 2-2 Skink is really nice value. There was a Fight the Cuckoo, was really important blocking stuff. But the second best card in the deck is clearly the Black Goat. So I would say first Ant Queen, second this Magpie ability Black Goat. I think it's the first time I've gotten the Magpie ability, the search out a card, the tutor ability on one of these. And third has to be probably the Direwolf Pup, but the Skink's been really useful. And then the rest of the deck is just like functional cards that can last me until I get my Ant Queen, and then I don't even have to pay for it. I just win. It's great. What a card. What an Ant Queen.
Okay, this deck, I think, is a very kind of standard version of a Direwolf Pup deck, in part because I ended up with 4 Direwolf Pups. You can't really see here, but the important one was I got it up to a 2-1 so I could beat the first boss with a little bit of item help, and then I got it up to a 2-3. And that was really critical, because that means when it becomes a Direwolf, it's a 3-7, and a 3-7, even with annoying, can take out a lane of grizzly bears. So I actually beat the second and third bosses without having good item support because that direwolf was strong enough as long as I could get it out and maintain a solid board behind it. To do so, this was the first of these hands where I basically did do a good job of maintaining fair hand mechanic, which means not that I kept it to 1, 1, or 0 drop, but that they were all really high impact, where I had these 2 raccoons that could tutor up whatever I needed, and these tadpoles that offered me infinite sacrifices. I only got the second one from Goobert late, but I had the first one for much of the way. My opening picks at the first trader were Magpie and Cockroach, which are obviously very powerful cards. Putting Magpie on Raccoon was really nice, and then I wasn't sure where to put Cockroach. But Tadpole came along, and putting Cockroach on 0-cost stuff just makes it easy to get out. I ended up getting a Direwolf and this late, which obviously is a very strong combination, 8 damage a turn in the far left. The Elk I got from beating the third boss, that wasn't really part of it, and I just kept picking up Direwolf Pups and winning fights by trying to get Direwolf Pups out. The Alpha gives them a nice boost. I tried to get rid of the Coyote, but didn't, so now it's a 2-5. Never got rid of this Rabbit Pelt. Picked up this Wolf at some point. I had a Cuckoo, which was also a 1-drop, and is a 1-drop, of course, and that did some really useful stuff. And then for a while I had 2. I got a second one with these 2 abilities from a cave, and there were a number of battles I won by just blocking up multiple lanes with the Cuckoos, where I had both of them at once and could just block all the lanes, and they'd have like a 3-3 double strike vulture, and that lane would get blocked, and then they'd send another one, and I'd just block that lane with an egg, and then in the third lane they'd have like a mole man, and that's not a threat, and I could slowly eke out the victory. I eventually combined them because I thought this as a 2-2 would be a little higher impact, because you really want, because of fair hand, where you're guaranteed at least one of your 0 or 1 drops in your hand, if you can keep the baseline level of those really high, that's very good. And I think for bosses, the Cuckoo is lower impact, so I wanted to get its impact up, so I did combine them at the Mycologist rather than sticking more Direwolf Pups together. I also got a Direwolf Pup in the cave with these abilities, and it combined with my boosted 2/3/1. So now it's a 3/4 with goofy abilities. But very nice card. So overall, I wasn't able to clear out all the kind of riffraff in this deck. Alpha is just a nice card. But I think the stars of the show were obviously Magpie on a 1-drop. Raccoon has nothing to do with why this card is good. Um, a 0-cost thing that is recurring. The annoying thing about Tadpole versus like Geck or even Rabbit is if you leave it for a turn, it becomes a 1/2, which is obviously an improvement, but it is now a 1/2 for 1, and when it returns to your hand, it is now for 1. So if you are intending to use it to pump out a ton of Direwolf Pups and 2-cost cards, which is what I was doing, you kind of don't want to play it if you're going to let it sit on the board for a turn. So unlike a rabbit, like you can't chump block with it. I would have rather, obviously you can only end up with rabbits if you're in the 0-cost deck, I think. But I would have rather had like a 0/1 for 0 here that didn't have the Tadpole's abilities, that had Undying. That would have been better. But still, this was a very good card. And then Cuckoo and Direwolf Pup. These were the 4 key cards that made this deck run. But I think basically this is I got to a 1-drop that would help me get out my Direwolf Pup. Could have been with Magpie ability, could have been with the Goat ability. Something that helps me make sure I have my good cards and I can play them. And then other cards that facilitate playing them, and then a fairly nice top end in a boosted Direwolf Pup. And then Cuckoo just really fits into lots of decks well. Unless you're like on a Mantis God deck or like an Undying Black Goat where you need to have exactly this 1-drop or you're dead, where all your deck is built around that 1-drop. Almost every deck, if you're like, okay, I have a good 1-drop, but I could take another 1-drop, it's fine, I don't care that much about fair hand mechanic. Cuckoo is almost always like a nice thing to fit in that deck and can be a real saving grace in map 3 versus some of the opposing decks. So I think this was kind of my most conventional deck so far, in that I just kind of did what the deck is intended to do. But I quite like it. I liked getting this late. Fun combo. A lot of times when you get Bifurcated Strike from Mantis or Double Strike from Dire Wolf, you just want to move it to something else that basically has 3 power, because getting up to 6 power is such a critical break point in so many fights. And that's why Wolf is just a really good card, and people who treat this as a vanilla, like, dull card that, like, is low priority, I think are wrong. Wolf with just a little help can do so much work. And, like, Dire Wolf Pup or Dire Wolf with a little help can do so much work, but Wolf is often available and really nice. It also, this deck, did I end up getting a canine totem? I don't think so. But this deck obviously is also really ready for a canine totem. And the cards all fit together well. I think canines, okay, insects have Mantis. Insect is very strong. But I think canines have become my firm second favorite. They were at this when I started playing, but then I moved towards some kind of abilities and some other cards that made me interested in other places. But I've come back to just canine is great. When I end up at the totem card picker, I will, if available, almost always pick insect or canine. And when I have reptile, hooved, and avian, I almost always end up picking reptile. But in this deck, my priority would be like beast, insect, canine, insect, reptile. So, anyways, good deck. Had fun playing it. Pretty normal stuff, but I'm trying to give just a variety of examples here of just the decks I'm using that are winning, and sometimes they'll all look similar because similar strategies work. Alright, I'm pretty pleased with this deck. This is another Bones deck. What I like about this deck is I think every card in it is basically good. Now, a couple things to note. So the Direwolf Pup, per usual, got it +1 attack early. That seems to be just a constant in runs that go good, as I snag +1 somewhere. Sometimes you get the wrench plus a kill, and you don't need the +1 because it could do 4 and you get the wrench for 1 extra. Or you get a Mantis, but I haven't been seeing Mantises. So this has been the way I've been getting past the first boss, is some kind of kill or turner thing. Or Hourglass, though I haven't had that, but that would work as well. Plus a 2-power Direwolf Pup that gets to 3 with Double Strike, can do 6 to a lane. Got rid of the raccoon I forget what I did for that. Um, Coyote left alone. Coyote's a perfectly respectable card. Picked up a Wolf Cub, got it +1, and then moved Direwolf's ability onto it. That was great. I managed to duplicate it later. Sadly, the dupe does not have double strike, but still quite nice. A 4/2 Wolf is a good card. Picked up a couple Mud Turtles, thinking I might put it on the Direwolf pup. That gives it some ability to solo the boss if you can hold on the other lanes, or put it on the Wolf Cub before I got double strike there. I ended up not having a place for it, and I picked up another, and then I got an adder, so I put Death Touch on the Mud Turtle because I thought it can just sit there punching things. And then I combined two, and now it's just a pretty nice card for 2 cost. Another Undying Tadpole. It was just the cheapest thing I had. I picked one up. I got a cockroach. I didn't have natural places to put it, but this is obviously a good card. Fantastic Bloodhound at the cave. Normally, Bloodhound is the worst canine, but this Bloodhound is incredible. Having double strike and death touch means it can do things like kill a grizzly and then do damage. Obviously, it's not an amazing combination because it usually can't kill the thing behind. But if it kills with overkill, then the death touch hits the thing behind. Just obviously, this is 4 power for 2, which is good, very good, and with death touch. And if it's power upable via like being next to an alpha, that's great. This Warren I got from a cave. It was the best option. It obviously the abilities are not very useful, but it is a Warren. It's not a Warren where I can move the ability, but Warrens are so good, it's still a decent card. I got a Raven. I couldn't do much with it, but I picked up a Direwolf at the end and used the final spot before the final boss to give it double strike. So now it's a good card. Um, I had a Magpie and I wanted to move it to something cheaper, and I had a Rabbit Pelt lying around that I needed to grab that skinning knife you see on the right, which I didn't need to use against the boss because the deck's powerful enough that like we'll get to it, but basically Bloodhound just beat the boss. This Wolf Cub was a dupe. Another nice pickup from a cave. I don't have much that costs bones, just the Coyote and this. Um, I do produce some bones. For instance, the Warren produces some extra bones. So this is just nice. I've not used the Apple ability or flying, but alphas are nice, and those abilities don't really hurt. And then another nice cave pickup. Good Porcupine. Happy to move its stats over if I sacrifice it. Happy to have Magpie ability on a 1-cost card. So I'm really pleased with this deck because aside improving the Coyote, every single card in it, the Warren isn't improved really, but like basically every card in it is improved and quite powerful. The MVP is probably the double strike Wolf Cub, though of course the Dire Wolf Pup is very important early. That Mud Turtle's great, and this Bloodhound has been fantastic. The Bloodhound, obviously, every card here is good. This is a great deck. This is one of the best decks I've made. But the Bloodhound, one thing I noticed with this deck was like Direwolf Pup, Coyote, Wolf Cub. I am in canines. I am in canines hard. And so I hit up 2 wood carvers, totem carvers early. And the first one, I didn't have the canine head as an option. But there was the reptile head. So I took that thinking maybe mud turtle tadpole stuff. And the second one, there was some okay ability, maybe evolve. Didn't seem like it made that big a difference, but there was the canine head, so I grabbed it. And mid-third world, I got Fecundity, because I kept going to the wood carver, and I got Fecundity. So now, when I drop this 2/1 Wolf Cub, I get another 2/1 Wolf Cub with double strike in my hand. When I drop this Bloodhound, and this is how I beat the third boss without using anything, I played the Bloodhound, and I got another Bloodhound, and with that Tadpole, I was able to play the other one, and the Alpha next to it. I didn't end up sequencing it so I could play 2 Alphas, because the Alpha also duplicates, because my Wolf Cubs, my Alpha, my Bloodhound, my Coyote, and my Direwolf Pup all duplicate now when they come out. I was able to play 2 Bloodhounds, one of them with +1, and each of them kill the Grizzly in front and then do damage to the face because the square is empty on the second strike, and that did 5 damage, and it was a very easy third boss, and I am very confident this deck will be able to take the final boss, even if I don't have item generation or anything like that. This is one of my favorite decks I've run in this whole cycle. One of the ones where I've kept the deck relatively small for me. I know there are people that like make it to the final boss with like 6, 7 card decks and can do that more consistently than I do. Um, I do wonder what their other runs look like if they're losing a lot of runs trying to keep it so small. maybe I'm overestimating the final boss, but I find you can run out of power on the final boss. And I find if my deck is really reliant on one card to win, and I don't have it with Undying, um, I'm just going to deck myself. Or if my one threat dies, say to the cannonballs, or just to eventually the ship taking it down, that I don't have it. So I like to have a little bit thicker decks. Um, but this was, for me, a relatively small deck and a really tight one. All strong, all useful. Even the Coyote is just like, well, bones are kind of, 4 bones is just not that expensive to have. Um, so yeah, I'm very pumped about this deck. I think this uh, really nice kind of canine focused deck with the totem topping it off is just a very powerful deck. This deck, this deck is a beauty. Just before the final boss got Undying Canines, I've moved over to the vanilla deck, and for the first time so far this video, this is my first run with the deck. We'll see if I can make multiple in a row. We just got Undying on Canines, but basically we did everything like conventionally and good cards came. I picked up a second Bullfrog early in the hopes of combining them to make sure my 1-drops were good, but I put Magpie on the Stoat. I got rid of one of the Bullfrogs and then put Magpie on the other Bullfrog. That's why this one doesn't have Annoying, because why keep the annoying one? So we have 2 1-drops with Tutor, which means we can draw, whatever we want. I had got 2 Wolves early. I only combined them very late, so the win condition was generally tutor up Dire Wolf Pup, get that on the field quickly, hopefully have something like the. I had another Mealworm in the hand, the deck I eventually got rid of, but this Mealworm came from a cave later. Have something like Mealworm, because I got rid of cards, I get some bones for free, sack Mealworm and whatever I used to tutor to get Dire Wolf Pup out. That's usually enough that I don't die first turn, had some item support just in case, and then it starts doing 6 damage a turn, so it was enough. That also is what beat the bosses. Um, Alpha, nice addition, helps Direwolf Pup out a lot. Picked up a couple pack rats, so I generally had item generation. Combined them at the final spot before the 3rd boss. This card I picked up at a cave. This is incredible. The O3 is actually kind of useful because it means it can take a few hits and generate a few bees, though I never actually, I think, generated more than 1 bee a fight. But basically, it goes down. Often it's what I tutor. I either go for Direwolf Pup if that's clearly going to win and I can get it out, or I grab this, block a hit on the ground with this, get a bee. Now I can play a bee and sack into this for any 2-drop, and I can just play out my hand of 2-drops. You'll notice the deck has a lot of 2-drops. And use this to block whatever the most dangerous square is. Unbelievably good card. The cave is incredible. Go to the cave. So my fair hand mechanic abuse is 2 tutors and 1/1-drop that's just super broken. And I often use the tutors to get the 1-drop. Coyote is, of course, fine. Never had a chance to really change it. Mud Turtle, I was intending to move over to Direwolf Pup. Never happened. Another cave card, not amazing. I've never drawn it. It doesn't look great, but it's kind of nice to get the apple on this, just in case I do want to sack it into something. It comes out for free and then gives a nice little stat boost. Elk I tried to get rid of, so it's a 2/8 because it got +4 on health. Mealworm, nice pickup at a cave. Coming with a duplicate of itself and sacking for bones means it's easy to play for that duplicate and just gives extra sacrificial outlets that they're usually not needed because this card's so good. Picked up the Wolverine late, got this from the 3rd boss. Wolverine I'm not so happy about, but it was from one of the cost card choices, so I just didn't want to get a 1-drop because I didn't want to screw with fair hand mechanic. Just a nice card. And this I picked up at a cave. I was mostly avoiding the 1-drop options, which also weren't very good, though there was a tempting, interesting Skink, but I didn't think it was powerful enough to mess with my tutor and incredible mirror kraken setup. So I took this. I haven't drawn it. It's obviously a river snapper. Is it better than your average river snapper? Sure. Both of those abilities are slight positives, but also it's still a river snapper. Really liked this deck, and at the very end picked up Unkillable Canines, which is pretty fun. Obviously, these are pretty costly to get out, so them being unkillable doesn't feel that great, but they're not that costly if I've gotten a single bee off this. because I can just pump out 2 drops forever. So actually, it just means these are all free. I also have a bleach saved up for the final boss, as if that was possibly a threat. Do I have Death Touch? No, so I can't do the super fun, just kill it in one turn final boss sections, but yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Because my wolves and direwolf pups are recurring, I'm probably just going to use the bleach on an earlier stage to get through them quicker. But there is just how can you die with this setup, right? I'm gonna either have this unkillable thing in my opening hand, or I'm gonna tutor it up with something I have in my opening hand. Then I'm gonna make a wall with that, with these, and just play my 2 drop wolves forever. Um, so I'll probably use the bleach on round 1 just to make sure it's comfortable rather than on the ship, which is a rare occurrence. So yeah, very powerful deck this one, and I love the cards I get from the cave. It also creates more variety in the game, right? There's only so many setups you can do, but when stuff can start having multiple abilities, start combining in interesting ways that you wouldn't be able to combine on those cards normally, that's really neat and feels like it opens up new tools in the game. So once you've played this game more than I should have, it is really nice to go to the cave and just see what pops out, because you could get something funny you'd never thought of combining. All right. Love this deck. I love the vanilla deck. Vanilla deck, underrated and fun, and hoping to win 2 in a row, because that's pretty rare for me. Should be higher given my overall win percentages, but it doesn't seem to happen.
2 wins in a row for the vanilla deck, maybe suggesting Fair Hand Mechanic is very powerful and I should go to it more often. Here's the deck. This one also really clicked. It even beat the first boss without item help, and so I wasn't super item dependent throughout. I had a wolf and a direwolf pup going into the first boss, and I had gotten the dual strike wolf. My opening cards were Magpie and direwolf, so like it was a very good run because those are great cards to start with. I picked up a skink and put Magpie on the skink, and then I started trying to get rid of the other 1 drops. I got to a +1 attack campfire, tried to do it twice on the stoat, thinking I either get a 3-2 for 1, which has to be pretty good, or I get rid of the stoat. It got rid of the stoat. Later, I did that with the bullfrog, and I got a 3-2. Now, I probably still should have gotten rid of that, because making sure I draw the skink or tadpole, because I got the tadpole shortly after from a cave, is probably pretty valuable. But the tadpole's not always amazing if my hand is clunky, and I thought 3 damage, it's just hard to lose, so I ended up putting a mud turtle on it. I get so many mud turtles. You'll notice I got 2 mud turtles that I put together at the mycologist, and another mud turtle on the bullfrog. It's my default, like, I don't want to take a 1-drop here, because I don't want more 1-drops. I don't want to take, like, a bones card I don't like, or that I don't think my deck can support. And if there's choices between 2-drops, it's like, do I want this wild bull? I was forced to take it at the end. No, I don't like the card, and I don't want to move the ability. Mud Turtle is a card that's not good, but if something else needs to take the ability, that's fine. Everything is fine having the Mud Turtle's ability. You know, it's not a hindrance or something to deal with, like, the movement abilities. And it's just like, it's just not bad enough in every way that I take a lot of Mud Turtles. And I think that's like my defining stylistic trait, is I end up with a lot of Mud Turtles. Anyway, so I got the double strike wolf. That was obviously great. This skink is obviously great. Picked up a bat. Bats are fine. Bats are basically the same as coyotes. You know, coyotes can pick stuff off, but then they die. Bats can do a little damage, then they die. But bats, you can stick behind like a tree stump or something, and there are a few spots that are frozen opossum that it's more useful, and you can just do damage. And it's, you know, 2 damage a turn is a lot. Tadpole's obviously very nice. Undying Tadpole. This one I didn't even have to get a cockroach. I just got it at cave. This was a fun pickup from a cave. I haven't actually gotten to play it. I've never drawn it, but like, that's a neat card. I was hoping to combine it with another elk. I picked up over a mud turtle, I believe. I could have had 4 mud turtles. I ended up moving a direwolf pup's things to it. Just thought it looked reasonable. I hoped I would get to combine these 2 and get a 4-8 with just an insane suite of weird abilities. This was another cave result, perfectly nice. Another cave, was hoping to combine them, never got the chance, and picked these 2 up late. And another cave. I got so many caves this run, and with quite powerful effects, and having all the bifurcated strikes meant it was easy for me to get 5 or 6 damage in a lane, or 5 or 6 damage at the start of fights. So a lot of fights just ended instantly. Like if I draw the kraken and I draw the tadpole and I draw, you start with the aqua squirrel, just put this in lane 2 and that's 6 damage. Or you do that, but you draw the wolf instead, that's 6 damage, right? It was very easy for this deck to reach 6 damage, and very good deck. Happy to win 2 in a row. We'll see if we can go for 3, because I'm trying to do 3 of these with each deck. But this one went well. I love the to get rid of the 1/2s, just try to do 2+1s on them. If you run across a +1 and don't need it elsewhere, and you'll notice I ran across a lot of +1s this run. It was lucky in that front. Like the skink got +1 attack, the stoat died from 2+1 attacks, the bullfrog got the 2+1s. So I got 3 over the run, which is obviously more than you can expect. But I think it's a nice way to try to get rid of your 1-drops, because you want to clear them out or make them good enough that they can be your build around. And I had the magpie at the start, but I got the skink immediately. I was going to put the magpie on the bullfrog or the stoat, because you want your worst 1-drop to be the highest value possible. The skink's already pretty good. Make one of the bullfrog or stoat even better and get rid of the other. And then you can either improve the skink, which is an easy card to improve because any ability on it, it can like replicate and do more of. But the upside of magpie skink, of being able to get the magpie effect multiple times, is just so big that I thought I put it on the skink and I try to get rid of the bullfrog and stoat at the nearest opportunities. And then I didn't see sacrificial altars for a while. You'll notice this deck has very few sacrificial altar effects, aside the wolf and skink I got very early, and then, which are huge ones. But then I didn't get anything till I eventually put this on the elk late and this on the bullfrog late, but nothing in the mid game to get rid of the bullfrog. So the mid game was the most dangerous part of this, because it was, how do I survive fights where the bullfrog is my opening 1-drop? Which maybe means I should have prioritized getting rid of the bullfrog, but I don't know if I had a chance, because it was really important to get double strike on the wolf. Without that, I'm not beating the boss. Oh, the boss was interesting, because I knew I had a small deck, wolf, double strike wolf, and a dire wolf pup. How do I beat the boss? It was the prospector. So I have to make sure I clear out the first phase with my dire wolf pup having evolved but not taken damage, so it can survive a turn from the grizzlies, with my wolf unplayed, because I need its damage shortly, and with the mule beaten. So I had a lot of skink maneuvering, and it was a tricky fight to manage, but I got to that game state, and then I blocked up enough lanes. The prospector, the mule gave me enough blockers. I could block up lanes, and I had a few things in my deck. I might have had a boulder or something as an item, which gave me an extra couple blocks. I think I did. Not a frozen opossum, sadly. That would have been 3 blocks. But anyhow, so the dire wolf does 4 damage the first turn, survives a hit because it doesn't have annoying, and then 2 damage to the grizzly to kill it, and 2 damage to the face. And that's really important, because the next grizzly comes down. Now, I could then play the wolf to kill that grizzly, and then lethal them next turn, except this had taken so much time, I had decked myself, and so what I needed to do instead was I had done 3 damage to one of the other grizzlies, so I put my double strike wolf in front of that. It kills it with the first hit and does 3 to the face the second hit, and that plus the 2 the dire wolf pup had done was 5 total. My game plan was the dire wolf does 4 to a lane, and then 4 more, and then the wolf can clear that lane and do lethal the next turn, but I did not have the time to do that, and I did not have enough blockers. Or I just barely had enough blockers, but I had decked myself, so I had to, I thought, go for it immediately in case starvation landed on the wrong lane, and the wolf was blanked by it. So that was a really fun fight, and being able to beat the first boss without items is obviously very possible, but very rare, and just feels really nice when it's achieved. So these decks might just be getting better. It's possible playing this game again, playing more of it, I'm getting back into form and playing better, also having won 2 in a row here. But it is also possible, like, I'm getting beaten over the head with good cards at the start the last couple runs, and I wasn't earlier. It can be hard to differentiate those things. Alright, did not get the 3 in a row, shucks. But actually, the third game was the most interesting. I just got really bad RNG the whole way. And often when I get really bad RNG, I lose immediately. Often when I get okay RNG, I do badly. but managed to snake through a bunch of situations. Couldn't quite pull it off. So here we are a run later, having not gotten the 3 in a row. Basically started with the Undying Skink. Uh, Either got Cockroach, I think I got Cockroach and Skink immediately, and it was all 1-drops on the opening stage. I think the choice was Cockroach Cuckoo or Cockroach Skink. I went Skink. There's a case that that's the wrong choice. I love the Skink, though. There's a good case that's the wrong choice. The Skink, you can make them like a kind of undying army that makes it easy to power out expensive cards. You'll notice I kept consistent on Fair Hand Mechanic and just get myself the Skink early. It gets hit once. Now I have stuff to sacrifice, and I can just flood the board with stuff. And then I got rid of the Bullfrog and the Stoat. The Bullfrog moved on to a random Ant Queen I had to pick up. Never got rid of the Wolf. For once, the Wolf wasn't at all relevant. Basically beat the first boss with the Grizzly, with the Skink blocking up lanes and doing enough damage somewhere that the Grizzly could finish off the lane. And then put together some better pieces. I kept getting the card that has every time you kill, put +1 on things, just because I couldn't take 1-drops. And so I added that to a Dire Wolf Pup. And a Turkey Vulture. I decided to keep the Turkey Vulture over the 1/3 just because I have nothing else that costs bones. And I do make a lot of bones with my Skink, just chump blocking everything. Grizzly with Annoying is fine. That was a good place to put the Stoat ability. I would do that again. I don't know if I've ever done it before. But the critical amount of health to have is 5, right? So if you have a Dire Wolf Pup at the start with Annoying, it goes to 5, but it's really 4, so that kind of sucks. A Grizzly is 6, and it drops to 5. That means it can take a hit from the Grizzlies, and that's just incredibly valuable. Dire Wolf's good. Again, the Undying Skink was so good, I was able to beat a boss, and including, it was actually the Angler first, which was a very tricky boss to beat with the Skink, because the weakness is Skink versus Flying. And without actually ever needing items, I survived multiple flying fights, including the Angler to start, and in the Third World there was a flying fight, though not a double strike flying fight. I don't think I would have survived a double striker. What I really wish I could have gotten, but I just didn't get any campfires, was a +1 attack on the Skink, or even +2. I wouldn't have taken the risk, but if I could have gotten 2 separate +1s, that would have been great. That's clearly the place I should put damage ups, because the way this deck is going to lose is if I face flyers, and I need the Skink to do enough damage that I survive long enough to get to my other cards. And so this deck did have a real chance of losing on some fights. Other than that, was just a lot of powerful cards. I got a 2/2 Field Mice with abilities from the Cave. That's fantastic. Managed to combine it with another Field Mice, and obviously that card is super busted. 4/4 Death Touch makes another of itself and spawns Sacrificial Fodder, which I don't even need because by the time I've gotten it out, my Skink is set up to go. But if I don't have my Skink rolling because they have flyers, that's really useful. I haven't played the Bloodhound, but obviously that's good. Use Goobert on the Field Mice. There's no point Gooberting the Skink because the Skink lives forever anyway, and I do not actually want to draw 2 of them because, again, on the flying fights, I need to get out bigger stuff to survive. And the Elk helps me draw whatever big thing I want. Good deck. The deck I've moved most off my initial stuff. Like, I would happily have gotten rid of the Wolf at some point. Just the opportunity never seemed right. And just ended up with a Undying Skink theme deck, which is quite a good deck to move into. If you see Cockroach and Skink, or Cockroach and Warren, or Cockroach and Beehive, though that is a flying problem as well, those 3 decks can just roll the game. Cockroach Warren is best, because Cockroach Warren, you turn 1 ramp into your more expensive drops. So if they have flying, it's okay, because you've already gotten out something more expensive to start matching the damage. So Cockroach Warren is the best of those, but you can't always go for it, because if you start with like the null cost deck and you see Cockroach Warren, you just don't have enough damage output. Same with Cockroach Beehive. Cockroach Beehive has the flying problem. I think Cockroach Skink is a little better than Cockroach Beehive because it's easier to get it to handle the flying issue, and it also has a little more damage output, so there are more decks that can go for it because they're not completely giving up on all damage whatsoever. So Cockroach Skink is one of my favorite kind of starting things, and rather than doing the normal kind of vanilla deck stuff where you figure out how do I get my Wolf to beat the first boss, how do I fix my 1-drop issues, here it was just, I don't care about my wolf. It's a 2-drop. It's fine. We'll just leave it in the deck. It's all about the skink and getting rid of the other 1-drops, which is a fun deck to play, and I'm glad to have one of these in here. I have no idea. I might end up in it again because if you see the cards, it's a good thing to transition into from whatever it is you're doing.
Alright, I've switched to the Mantis God deck for the next 3, and this first one is just very generic Mantis God action. I got rid of the ringworms, I put one of them onto the wild bull and one onto the wolf. These were just random 2-drops I picked up because the only thing to do is the generic way of playing this deck, which I did this time, which wasn't very interesting, I'm not very enthused about this deck, was you only pick up 2-drops and more. You get rid of the ringworms when you can. Sometimes you get rid of them at campfires, but often you get rid of them to poison the campfire people. But the only 2 campfires I hit were +1 attack. The first one I thought, why not coin flip and go for the big boost on Mantis God? If I fail, I'll just restart. I'm not keeping track of my win rate, so I may as well do runs quick and do this the generic way and just show it. And I think this is the way people often first beat Skullstorm, is they, basically reset until they get really good Mantis God luck. So that's what I did this run, and it makes the most of the game really dull, and it also feels really coin flippy, because I just won a bunch of coin flips, right? I got my first campfire was plus attack, I got +2 on it. My second campfire was plus attack, I decided I don't need to take that much a risk, I got +1. I didn't take the risk. Then later I got to a Goobert, I doubled my Mantis God. Then later I got to a mycologist. I combined it into an 8-2. I never got a cockroach or fecundity or any way to make it more redundant, so at the very end I combined it with a pronghorn because it actually now hits 5 times. It does 40 damage, which is obviously nuts, and does more than 40 if it's next to my alpha or my cockroach. So you're picking up 2-drops. I picked up the tentacles. I picked up a bunch of pronghorns. I picked up the mud. No, that's about it. The wolf and the wild bull. Then you can also pick up bone stuff. I was forced a black goat at some point. Well, I was forced a 1-drop. I landed on a square and I could only get 1-drops. So I took the black goat because I think I had seen at the top of the map. If I hadn't seen it, came up after the get rid of a card slot coming. And so I think it was a spot or 2 later. It was towards the end of the map, so it might have been 2 spots later because there's 3 spots at the end. I'm not sure. But either way, I was able to get rid of it and get 8 bones a turn, which made me comfortable taking more bones. I picked up the alpha because it's nice to have one good bone card that can help Mantis God. But later I picked up the turkey vulture because this is a deck that can support it, and a couple wolverines, which I later combined and then stuck Death Touch on. Never got to play it because Mantis God ends every fight instantly, including now bosses, now that it has bifurcated and trifurcated strike. The second best card of the deck as it played out was definitely the cockroach. There were actually some bosses I could have lost to, because 4 damage to 3 different squares is not actually enough to win. Neither is 4 damage to 3 squares twice. Then your Mantis Gods die, and you've only killed 1 Grizzly in each row, and you actually haven't done that much extra damage. But if I put the cockroach between them, that boosted them both to 5, which actually does finish the fight in 1 turn. And it's a pretty great card in itself. Amazing cockroach I got here. Off the cave, because even when you're trying to stay on fair hand mechanic, it still can be worth it going to the cave. And I still almost screwed up this deck enough I couldn't beat the boss because I hadn't picked up items. But yeah, this is a very generic Mantis God deck. Not quite as good as if you can get the cockroach on the Mantis God or fecundity on the Mantis God, something that just lets it stay and play longer. But I got enough boosts, I won enough coin flips, it doesn't make a difference. So, by far my least favorite of the decks I've run so far, but I think it was important to have one of these decks in here. It actually took me quite a number of tries. I think I failed more times getting this run than I did on any of the others, because you have to win like 4 coin flips, so it takes like 1 out of 8 tries, right? It took me, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 tries. I have no idea how many. A lot of them were very quick, so probably like 3 really quick ones built up. I lost some flips and just lost the Mantis God at campfires. It's probably like 7 or 8 runs. And so this was not actually an efficient way to beat it per run, but it was an efficient way to beat it time-wise, because only 2 of those runs did I make it past the first boss. Maybe 3. 3 of those runs I made it past the first boss. One of them I actually lost Mantis God at a campfire, but had gotten cards I liked and just wanted to keep going because I actually liked my deck. I was still stuck with some ringworms, and the deck wasn't good enough to carry that when I ended up hitting a trouble spot. But I actually did like a pretty decent job one of the times I lost the Mantis God, but the others I just let myself die because my deck was not ready to fight that. Um, but this is to say, like, if you want to beat Skullstorm quickly and you don't mind how many attempts it takes, this strategy works. But I think it is a kind of inefficient strategy, and you can attain higher win rates than it. It's also possible I don't execute this strategy very well. I do seek out campfires and sacrificial altars, ways to get rid of the ringworms, ways to boost the Mantis God. I don't take other one drops. I think the strategy to this deck is pretty streamlined, such that it's not that hard to be a relatively optimal player going for all in on Mantis God strats. But I don't, now that I've done them a number of times, I don't enjoy them so much. I think they are fun to do well, and I think mastering it is a nice skill. Um, but I think for my other Mantis God decks, I'm going to try maybe not to abuse Fairhand Mechanic, or not abuse it in the same way, and try to do something that is more fun for me to do than running this deck, which I've played before. I've never actually combined bifurcated and trifurcated strike before, and that is a crazy effect. That this Mantis God hits 5 times and can just win a fight against Grizzlies on its own in a single turn with like massive overkill damage is pretty sweet. And I'd never really considered putting this on it before, but I thought, hey, what if that works? And like most things in this game, your cool ideas do actually work, which is awesome. So that was the really exciting part of this one. I also like this mud turtle I picked up. It's never come into play, of course, because literally none of these cards except the cockroach have actually hit the field. Is that true? No, there was a fight I had to delay because I had to set up the Mantis God Cockroach setup against the second boss, the Prospector. So I think the Wolf came out and fought a bit there, and I might have put out a Pronghorn in that fight, but nothing else has seen the field. I've never had the Turkey Vulture in an opening hand where it would have come out. I don't think I've had the Alpha in an opening hand where it would have boosted. It's just been the Cockroach. So I've played like 3 of these cards, and that's part of the reason the deck isn't that interesting, is because you just play the same card and then the fight's over. So, so it goes. Well, this is 2 wins in a row on the Mantis God deck. This time went well. Oops, I did not mean to go to that square. I meant to go to the Totem Carver for good measure, because I do have an ant head, and I thought it would be extra abusive to get that. Then I misclicked, and whatever. You know what? It's fine, because RNG hit us over the head this game. We, on the opening squares immediately after the opening card pick, incidentally, we got a cockroach there, which is perfect. Campfire, +2 health, did a ringworm, got rid of the ringworm. Then quickly after, hit a campfire with +2 attack. Hit after that immediately a sacrificial altar. I forget what order, but we quickly had a 3-1. We also got rid of the ringworm at some point there. I forget how I got rid of the other ringworm. I might have still had it at the start of World 2 and might have been on one of the X squares where you get rid of a card. But I got rid of that pretty quick, and then the Mantis God just one-shot every fight except bosses. For bosses, I picked up a Direwolf Pup. That and Cockroach were my first 2 cards. I boosted Coyote's defense because there was no point to boosting Mantis's God health because it just comes back. I don't know, just found ways to pick up little extra damage. Caves gave us item generation as if it was needed. Curiously, they have the exact same abilities. That was nice. These cards have all never been played. Mantis God ends every fight instantly, but sometimes I generate an item with Mealworm, which is how I currently have an Hourglass and Scissors. Then, on the very last tiles before the 3rd boss, there was Goobert and Mycologist in a row. So Goobert made another Mantis God this time, but he misdrew the Undying and gave it item. But that means we combined it, so it now spawns items too. This is so stupidly broken. This is when the Mantis God deck comes right. It's worth noting you still have to make sure you get bosses right, because for most of the run, it was only in the final world that we got another campfire and it became a 5-1, and then only at the very end, so I've only had it for the 3rd boss, did it double and Mycologist to become a 10-2. But with it as a 3-1, bosses can be kind of tricky, right? For instance, I had a turn and clock basically coming into every boss. So that means I need it to be in the center right lane as I beat the first phase, so that it goes to center left, so that it can hit with its left shot the open far left lane. But I also need to make sure I can put 2 damage on that lane. So the coyote and the bat both had use there. Um, but making sure I had that set up took at least a little bit of skill, and that was the place I could have screwed up. But this was pretty basic, and I just got hit over the head by RNG. I am on 2 in a row. I hope to present a more interesting deck for the third deck that maybe doesn't use fair hand mechanic. But honestly, I'm probably my next win is going to be when I get hit over the head by RNG again. This time was much more than last time, or much more convincing than last time. Last time I really needed like 3 or 4 things to go exactly right. This time it didn't feel like I needed things to go exactly right because I started with the cockroach, which is something going exactly right, but it feels like from the start I had it. And I got the first ringworm eaten immediately, and then the tiles were good. So it didn't feel like I was winning coin flips. The last run, it felt like I was winning a lot of coin flips. This run, it didn't feel like I needed to win coin flips because it was immediately so powerful. And, you just get Mantis God runs like this every so often, and they feel great, and they're how you set, like, speedrun records for Casey's mod. But they're not the most interesting to play, and I really enjoy playing the non-fair hand mechanic decks that I was playing in previous videos. But, this deck is great. All right, did not go 3 for 3, but did go 3 for 4. At this very final woodcarver, I finally got an insect head to go with fecundity. My elk head was wasted. You can look at the deck. There is 1 elk in the deck. It's never been played. My bird head is wasted. There's 1 bird. My reptile head is wasted. There's 1 reptile, mud turtle. But we finally got the insect head, and now everything's gonna have fecundity. But what's fun about this deck is basically I got this flying ant early at a gold axe tile, which was very lucky, right? Without that, this whole run goes different. Um, and then I wasn't getting any Mantis God boosts or anything like that. I wasn't getting campfires. Nothing like that was happening. So I kind of realized the flying ant was the better draw. And when I got a campfire, I put it on the dire wolf so I had a chance against the boss. So I did get a +1, but I couldn't use it for the Mantis because I thought I needed to beat the boss, which turned out, I think, to be correct. And then, at some point, I get a Magpie, and I realize the Mantis God is just there to tutor. It's just a tutor that does more damage. And I sacrificed one of the ringworms onto the direwolf, the other one onto the wolf. I meant to click the raven for rather than the direwolf, but I misclicked and then misclicked again, and my brain was turned off. So mistakes were made. It was supposed to be the wolf and the raven would get annoying, but it ended up on the direwolf, which was a serious mistake, really dumb. But then I ended up just having these 2 tutors, and from the first cave, I got this unbelievable cockroach. It was a 1-1 at the time, but because I realized this was my win condition, this dual strike cockroach. Oh, I also picked up a black goat and sacrificed it to the Bone Lord, so the cockroach can be played like infinite times. It spawns infinite items. I've always had great items. I would have been in trouble if I hadn't had an hourglass at one point. And it's just better than the Mantis God, right? The Mantis God does 3 and then dies immediately. The cockroach does 2, spawns items, and then returns. Now later I boosted it, but that's because I realized the Mantis God is just a tutor, the cockroach is the key to the deck. Then we pick up various 2-drops that just don't interfere with what we're doing. This was a fun find from another cave. Haven't had it in my hand, haven't played it. I tried to Goobert the cockroach back when it was a 1-1. It came out as a 0-1. That's a bummer. Never did manage to find a way to fix that. But, I'm tutoring, right? So I'm always drawing the right cockroach. I got this off a cave, haven't played it. These are just taking 2-drops to not interfere with the core game plan, which is use the flying ant and the Mantis God to tutor cockroach, and then cockroach will win or hold off long enough that I can get dire wolf out. And so only 4 cards in this have actually been played more than once, basically. Like the wolf has come out once or twice, the ravens come out once, they've been in the deck a long time. But nothing else has even been played because the core is 2 tutors. One of the tutor can sit on the field for a little because I did give it a plus to health in the mid game. So it can sit, do a little bit of damage, and then eventually be sacked into the dire wolf as the cockroach does the actual work. So it was fun because this deck, Mantis God is obviously a target in itself, but I realized I had higher value elsewhere, and I transitioned into a deck that could support that higher value. So this isn't the most different deck, but it is a bit different. And again, you get interesting things from caves, and I like running with what I get from the caves.
Okay, I'm kind of worried about the final boss on this one. Because I am very reliant on one card. Can you figure out which card it is? I never found a way to make Black Goat reliable. I didn't see like Fecundity or anything that would let it repeat. Undying obviously being optimal. Didn't see that. Got Magpie and Pronghorns as my opening cards, which I think are very good for this deck. Magpie meant I didn't have to get rid of the mole, rather I could improve it. And it is better to have the mole as a Magpie search card than to just get rid of it. There's a case for putting Magpie on Black Goat, and maybe I should have done that. The reason I liked this is because if I get the mole and have a Black Goat, I can go seek out the best thing in the deck. But you probably should argue that that would just be better on the Black Goat. I didn't see a way to get rid of the mole quickly after that, and I also wanted to put Pronghorn on the moosebuck, because I thought that would be pretty good. So I just didn't know if I'd have space to do 3 changes of move the mole. What would I put it on? I'd picked up a coyote, maybe the coyote. That would be fine. That's not a problem. Put Magpie on the black goat and Pronghorn on the moosebuck. I just wasn't sure I'd get 3 altars in the time to do that. But I think I made a mistake there now talking it out. I think I should have put Magpie on the black goat, done the obvious move, not tried to be clever. Then I got a coyote. At some point, I picked up a direwolf, and I just was forced into a bunch of sacrificial altars, so I ended up having to put the direwolf on the coyote because I had run out of sacrificial altars to do anything else. My deck stayed very small most of the way. Then I got Pronghorn on the moosebuck. Later, I had another altar, and I got another moosebuck, and I put direwolf on that, and then I combined them, so we have this wonderful monstrosity. At some point, I also picked up an adder, I think from a cave, that I sacrificed to the campfire, and thus I could get bigger boosts off the campfire for other things. It didn't have very good abilities. Had like the stone and whatnot. Anyways, so I ended up getting 2 boosts on the Great White and 2 boosts on the Dire Wolf. The reason I put the power boost on the Great White rather than the Dire Wolf is because I wanted to make sure I could one-shot basic fights. And if I get the Dire Wolf out, it already had the health plus. I thought, well, it's doing 4 damage a turn. It's pretty hard for me to lose there. So I'd rather make sure the Great Wolf can win. Because the Dire Wolf can block and the Great Wolf can't. Picked up another Black Goat. Was forced into an Elk Fawn at the end and then got a plus health after. And I thought, well, I can't get rid of the Elk Fawn. So I may as well give it enough health it doesn't feel like I just lose if I draw it instead of a goat or the mole. Got another moosebuck at the end and a river snapper at some point I couldn't get rid of. I don't love this deck. I think like it is the kind of, you have your black goats, you have 3 drops, but normally you want some way to repeat the black goats. I do have 2 of them, but it's a little shaky. And if we look at the side, I have a squirrel and a bones, which is helpful because I don't really have much bones production here. If I get out the moosebuck, it starts making bones, but I cannot put out the moosebuck early on the final boss. Unless I had items to clear the blockers, because I can't risk it dying. I need it for the final phase. So I need to beat everything up to the final phase without the moosebuck. Now, with the last deck with the Mantis God, or the Mantis God that was doing like 40 a turn, I could put that out turn 1, because it clears the first phase, then the cannons aim. Even if they're aiming at it, it clears the second phase. This moosebuck is not that incredible, and thus it's going to be a worrisome final fight. And if you don't see this, well, you won't see it, but that's because I'm worried about the final fight. And maybe it will go awry. This run, the second goat run, I think is the best deck I've had. Oops, let's go back for a sec. I have an hourglass and a skinning knife. I had them at the end of World Map 2, and just there was no reason to ever use them. The bosses can't beat this deck. The normal fights can't beat this deck. We have abused Fairhand Mechanic. This is the thinnest deck I've ever had. It really came together well. The cockroach I got at the very end, I wish I'd had some card to connect it with, just so every card could be nice in abilities, but basically I have the black goat. I have a couple things that just pop into effect. This came from a cave. This one I pieced together. Um, I took Fecundity and Dire Wolf early. I had a Beehive forced on me at some point. I had to take a 1-drop, but putting that on the moosebuck has been amazing. Like against the Trapper boss, I put it far left at the start of the fight. It takes out one of the frogs, moves to the next lane, blocks a hit, takes out that frog, moves to the next lane, and as it does so, it makes 3 Bs for me. Eventually, it clears the far right lane, and that's when the Direwolf comes in. These cards had already both been mycologisted to their current stats by the end of map 2. Map 3 was mostly me just dodging everything. Taking any opportunity to burn cards, for instance, sacrificial altars, but also intentionally failing caves in map 3, just so I wouldn't mess with this quite beautiful deck. I was forced to take a Raven Egg, but I had a Magpie, and I had gone a path that had a sacrificial altar because I was making sure to be able to make cuts at any point. So I was able to turn that into just, if I draw this, it turns into this, and there we go. Yeah. Even every card here except the Cockroach, which I just got, has actually seen some play. The Wolverine and Field Mouse, not so much, because the Direwolf and Moosebuck end most fights very rapidly. This is a great deck. This is probably the cleanest, best overall deck I've listed here, where there was like the least chance to have screwed up this run at some point. I quite like, in general, this is a little superpowered, but like, I quite enjoy playing the Black Goat decks in general. I think they're interesting to play, and you're usually not quite so overpowered that there's no decision making. Or at least on the way there, there's some decisions. And even if like you have like first turn into Moosebuck wins the fight, mycologist in Moosebuck, even if you have that kind of setup going, there's gonna be I'm a little discombobulated. There's gonna be danger points during bosses where you have to make sure to have that going into the second phase and how to deal with bosses. And this was just a version where that was all kept really well under control. So this was a fun deck to play, and I'm not having an incredible win rate this go round with the goats, but this was a deck that made the goats feel just way overpowered. Alright, our final goat deck never really came together in the way I wanted. I was hoping one of these decks I would do well with totems, because I think a nice elk strategy is if you can grab the goat strategy is grab an elk, a hooved totem, and that's going to help your black goat, and it's going to help your moosebuck. And because it can help either, that gives you room to kind of maneuver. If you get bifurcated strike, that's great for your moosebuck, and you can pick up stuff like an elk and actually have it be real value. But if you get something like Many Lives, which you see here, or one of the goat abilities, we'll talk about those in a sec, then you can put that on the goat. So I like getting the hoof token, the elk token early, because you can go multiple directions with it, so there are more good things for you to see. While if you were only trying to support your cheap enablers or only trying to support your expensive finishers, only certain abilities are going to be good. If you're trying to boost your black goat, who cares about bifurcated strike? But because you can go either way, you're going to be able to see more abilities you like. But none of my decks really got going that were in that direction. Also, I haven't really talked about the best abilities for Black Goat. I would say Undying number 1. It's the best recurrence. I would say Fecundity number 2. I've mentioned both of these. Number 3, I would say the Beaver Dam. And you could argue it's close to those top 2. Because you can sacrifice the dams if they have the triple blood ability. And so basically you just get a black goat and 3 drops, and you can just drop 3 drops turn 1 and slaughter most things. There's some care needed for specific bosses, and the final boss can be tricky on those builds, but that is a really nice way to go, a really strong build. I would say Many Lives is probably the 4th best ability, and part of the problem is Black Goat has Annoying, which means there's never a place to hide it in difficult fights. So you kind of can put it down, and maybe you can land a couple of the 3 drops, ideally 3 at once, but usually 2, because sometimes there's an obstacle or you just don't have the cards in your hand. It's turn 1, right, that you're hoping to drop these a lot of the time. Sometimes only 1, and then the Black Goat probably dies, depending on the fight. There are lots of fights you can make it live for a while, but like the hard fights, the fights that are going to be difficult, it probably dies, and you feel like, oh, Many Lives maybe got me a second use, but not necessarily. Now, you could say Fecundity also only gets 2 uses, but Fecundity, those uses are more consistent and you can space them out, which is really important for a boss, because on a boss, you might want to put out one thing to clear kind of the first area, but have a second use to clear the second area. No, with this, you probably have to play both at once, and on a boss like the Trapper, where basically anything you play at the start is going to die, you're suddenly left with a difficult endgame after those are cleared. So, I don't love Many Lives. It is probably the fourth best ability. Maybe it's behind the Magpie ability. Maybe it's behind Tutoring. It's probably the fifth best ability. Because Tutoring, you only get one use, but you can make it your really good, high value use. Um, so it's fourth or fifth. It's still good, but like it still improves the Black Goat. It does something useful, but there are kind of 5 abilities that really make sense on the Black Goat, and it probably is fifth with a case for fourth. Um, okay, then we just have some targets. The River Snapper is what I dropped the Mole Man on, and I never found a place to drop the River Snapper. I got this cat from a cave. This cat has been great. It's an amazing card. It can tutor anything. It can replay to help stuff out. But everything in the deck has to cost more than 1 so that my Black Goat works well and so that I reliably draw these. And that means the cat actually doesn't help me get out that many other cards. I'm still going to need a lot of squirrels to play anything. This Wolverine is another card from the cave, obviously incredible. The Corpse Maggot ability plus Undying is fantastic. I ended up getting Fecundity on 2 Dire Wolves. I initially wanted to put them on different things because I was hoping to hit a Mycologist, but I didn't see a single Mycologist this run, except very early when I only had some Opossums, and like I went to a square before it, and I was like, the Mycologist is next. I guess I take the Opossum here to double it up. I guess. I don't know. Um, yeah, I got this from a cave as well. So the caves were very kind to me. Caves are great. Go to caves. But other than that, like, I never felt like this deck came together that well. I don't have any super powered cards that I'm tutoring and getting out. The fights with this deck tend to be really slow and clunky, where I kind of play the cat, draw the rest of my deck, and then I'm not sure which cards to play because I can't sequence it right on the bosses. Specifically for the bosses, it's tricky to play. Other fights, it wins instantly, right? The goat puts out powerful things, or the cat draws the goat, and powerful things, or it draws the tentacle, and then I fill up my hand by tutoring. You know, it has many paths to victory in normal fights, but the boss fights have been kind of tricky. So I think it should beat the final boss. This Wolverine is pretty good insurance against anything. And I have 2 items. I have the skinning knife and the tourney thing, which is pretty great. So like, it's a good deck, but this one, where the last one felt like, yes, everything went right. This is the perfect version of this deck. This felt like I got a useful but the worst Black Goat ability. I got this cat that would be incredible in any other deck, but this deck is just not built to play well with the cat. I had these pack rats, but I never combined them or got to move their ability onto things that were more useful. I have this, like, I just have a bunch of, like, I wish I had moved the Magpie ability to something else. Like, it never tightened into this is really powerful, and it stayed as this is kind of a mess, where the cat is a good enough card that it's still working. And where the Black Goat plan is a good enough plan, it is just working well enough to make it through. But, which is fun. Like, it's fun to try to manage a deck where everything feels a bit clunky and nothing quite comes together. But I did really want to either show for the third deck here, Hoop Token deck, or Black Goat with the Beaver Goat strategy, because I think that's really a fun strategy. Goat Dam Goat, Black Beaver, I don't know. But I didn't end up getting any of those runs. I had a 1 try with each that I screwed up and or got unlucky, but probably screwed up. Not that runs like are guaranteed victories or anything, and if I lost, that doesn't mean I screwed up. I think perfect play would, have quite a far from 100% win rate, but it did feel like I'd screwed those runs up. Anyhow, I guess that concludes the Black Goat decks, and we will move on to another deck. We have Waterborne left, eggs, and what's the other one? Ants. I've left the 3 worst for last. Good for me. Okay, so it's not very popular, and it is objectively one of the worst decks. But the Curious Egg deck is actually kind of fun to play, because it doesn't come with any 1-drops. So if you see a good 1-drop, you know you can grab it and build a fair hand mechanic deck, and there's nothing you have to get rid of to get started. And so here, I didn't take a cuckoo immediately. I took the dire wolf and I took a field mice, which is where fecundity came from on the cuckoo, um, because the initial need you have is power. You have no damage output, so you have to find a way to win the first few fights. And that's an interesting thing because it really biases you towards higher cost stuff. Now, the curious eggs make it a bunch easier to get out the higher cost stuff because once you've sacrificed one thing, you can start to be able to sacrifice more curious eggs, and they often give you a nice outlet to get out the more expensive stuff. And you probably don't want too many 3-drops. It's not a deck that supports 3-drops great. It does support them a little, but there's sort of a math problem of you sack a squirrel to get out a cuckoo, that's 1 bone. You can play 1 curious egg, and if you could sack each curious egg individually, but you have to sack them all at once to get out more expensive stuff. So to get out a 2-drop, you'll still need another squirrel. And even if you have a bunch of curious eggs in hand, it doesn't always make the playing cards as nice as you'd want. But it does make it a little easier, and you can really support a bunch of 2-drops. So you want to end up with like a nice set of 2-drops and a really good 1-drop. Here, I ended up seeing a lot of dire wolves, and so I ended up combining 2 of them, and then I thought at this point I may as well put my cockroach ability on it. There wasn't something else that spoke to me. Like, field mice with cockroach, like, how many times are you going to spend 2 costs to play a 2-2? It's just not that big upside to play it more than twice. So I wasn't sure where else to put it, and obviously making sure I can repeat the dire wolf is pretty big impact. And then from there, it was just set up the cuckoo. Once I started seeing +1s to power, I saw 4 of them, and I gave them all to the cuckoo. And once it was a 3-1 with fecundity, every fight was basically over. Whatever lane is most dangerous, I block turn 1. Whatever lane is most dangerous the next turn, I block turn 2. And there's no way they're outpacing 6 damage with only 2 lanes left, often with one of those blocked by a tree. It was a very safe win on all fights. It wasn't a 1-turn kill in the way that some Mantis God decks get there or some other decks get there, but it was just really reliable. And sometimes you got the 1-turn kill, because if you have a curious egg in hand, you can play the second cuckoo. But it was just this very reliable, like if you see the double strike vulture, you just block that lane and it's not a problem. And it's nice to get to build around whatever 1-drop you see. And the cuckoo's a really elite 1-drop to build around. The problem is a lot of decks have trouble switching into it because they're kind of committed to another 1-drop. Are you going to start playing this if you have a Mantis God? No, you're probably going to stick with the Mantis God. If you've built the deck for the goat, you're probably going to stick with the goat. The cuckoo isn't exactly doing the things the goat needs. So it can be hard to go into, but it's a really nice fit here if you have enough damage that you can win some early fights. So I got the bell ringing kraken pretty early, and I felt really good at that point. And then I just picked up some other 2-drops. They were never all that relevant. I don't know if any of the next 4 2-drops have hit the field, except the field mice did once or twice. The elk never has, the wolf hasn't, the bloodhound hasn't. The ant queen I got at a cave. Caves were not super kind to me. I had to use some stuff to get rid of the terrible cave cards I got. Got a cockroach late, couldn't combine it with anything because I was forced to take a 1-drop from the 3rd boss, and the only 1-drop that had an ability on it was the stupid kingfisher, and so I knew I needed to get rid of it at the final sacrificial altar. But I thought I can put it on the bell ringer, because then the ship won't hit it, and that guarantees me 4 damage a turn against the ship, so it gives me an easy way to eventually take down the ship. So I thought that was helpful, even if a bad ability. I got Magpie at some point and put it on the curious egg. That's about it. This is basically, cuckoo is great, and then I just needed something that was a win condition against bosses after I stalled the board with cuckoo for a while. And so just had to be careful to get items and to make sure my dire wolf was in good shape. But I really enjoyed playing this deck. I think the curious egg deck, because it doesn't commit you to anything, is quite fun to play. But unlike the vanilla deck, you do have kind of desperate needs. You really need to get some damage early. And so this deck is like definitely 6th or worse, right? If you're ranking the decks for Skullstorm viability, it's certainly 6th best or worse, right? And it could be 7th. Could be behind Ants. I think for my play, I'd probably have it 6th. But I think of the 3 decks which I think all have significantly lower win percentages on Skullstorm, at least in my play. Maybe you're better at these. Um, this one's the most fun for me to play on Skullstorm. I like the ants a lot on easier difficulties. It's pretty fun to just have the tribal effects go off. But this is my favorite for Skullstorm of the bad decks, and this was a fun version. I liked. Very nice one drop to end up building around. After a fair number more failed attempts, we have another successful eggs deck. This one was pretty fun. Ended up getting rid of one of our eggs via the mycologist just because we had no other cards there. I like having a few eggs running around. They give me sacrificial fodder, and you usually land on an Exa card with the Bone Lord spot. That means these are basically just free. Great beehive. I had a beehive and a cuckoo, but I hadn't done anything with the cuckoo, so at some point I just got rid of it. I said, I want to make sure I draw the beehive reliably. Now, the weakness of the beehive is, of course, flying, and I actually did hit some serious flying enemies, and as easily could have been game overs if we hadn't gotten this wolf cub from the cave. I then spent all my +1s I saw on it, which was 2 after, so it's a 3-1. But this is an incredible wolf cub. It means I can block a lane, hit for 2 damage turn 1, and if you can block a lane and hit for 2 damage turn 1, you are not going to lose immediately. And then it's hitting for 6 after that, right? And because I boosted it, it's 6 turn 1 and 10 future turns, which is just like impossible to lose with, even if it's a raven egg you drop in front of you. This is an unbelievably good wolf cub, and really the star of the deck. This dire wolf was needed to beat some bosses. Pack rats are always useful, and no other card here mattered. I do have a totem that is very important. Now this card's sweet. It just like hit play once or twice and like won some fights, but like it's all about the wolf cub and the beehive here, and everything else is just kind of fodder. The direwolf's pretty important, right? Because we have to beat the boss. We have to be able to do enough damage. I did try to get a +1 on it early just to make bosses more reliable. I think I did beat the first boss without having very good items, without having like a kill or a turner clock. And the direwolf was very important there. And what was more important there was I got a totem early. I was forced into 2 totems early based on just the pathing I thought I needed to take. But like once I was committed to a side, it went like single path for at least one of them, but I think both. And I got almost immediately canine. I got immediately canine, and then I followed that up by getting the magpie ability, and I thought, this is incredible. But then, approaching the boss, I was forced into a 3rd one, and it offered me a death touch. And I thought, how am I going to beat the boss? Magpie lets me draw all my cards, but my cards can't beat the boss. I don't have items. I need Death Touch, because then Direwolf can kill a Grizzly and do 2, get hit for 4, kill the second Grizzly and do 2, and finish it turn 3. And if I can set up something like Pronghorn right, I can get the kill slightly quicker than that and won't need to block the other lanes as much. And that's what I was able to eventually do there. So this was really a totem-reliant run. Normally, you're kind of item-reliant for the first boss. This one ended up being totem-reliant on the first boss, which is a little odd. But the star of the deck is this unbelievably good Wolf Cub. The combination of Egg and Bifurcated Strike is just incredible, and on a 1-drop, it's pretty much safety in all fights. So this was a fun deck. I enjoyed this one. You'll also notice, per my usual habit, I picked up about 1 million Mud Turtles. Would have liked to move one of them over to the Direwolf, maybe somewhere else. Would have liked to move Pronghorn onto the Wild Bull. But I always felt there was something higher priority. Put Cockroach on something, Corpse Maggot on something. Like, this deck could really be, like, incredible with 4 sacrificial altars to clean it up. But it doesn't really matter, and it's now a big enough deck that it's not going to deck itself or get in trouble that way on the final boss. And I'm even lucky enough to be able to come in with Bleach and a Turner Clock, which are kind of the 2 ideal items, because Bleach lets Death Touch beat the final boss, as well as making it not a threat at all, the final stage. And we have lots of Death Touch because I've kept that on my wolves. I went to another canine and thought about switching to the Magpie ability, but I think Death Touch here is just a lot stronger. It's not stronger for every kind of totem, but I think on the canine totem it should be pretty reliably, especially when I have things that can hit multiple times. And then Turner Clock is better than a knife or scissors. I used my knife and kept the Turner Clock on the 3rd boss because it can steal one of the 1/8s rather than just kill it. Alright, incredibly, this is a second win in a row with the eggs deck, which I've certainly never done before. That said, I got hit over the head with the luck stick. I got the skink and the cockroach on the opening pick, and I took it. I had seen that there was a sacrificial altar, so I could immediately have a skink roach set up. But even then, sometimes you just don't have enough damage. I was lucky that basically immediately after there was items and I could be stocked on items and have I actually took the 2-2 there. Normally I take the item refill and use my items to get new items, but here I took the 2-2 because I just thought I needed some power. The skink, especially if we see flyers, and there were a bunch of flyers map one, it was a lot of insects, was a scary map one. The skink roach can get going, but I had no other power in the deck. I knew I would be down to the skink and 3 curious eggs, and I was very lucky to get remaining cards that I could use. The first, I went to a blood choice place, and I picked the 2 blood, and I got a pronghorns, which I later put on the wild bull, which wasn't great, but I slowly picked up more 2 drops. I got the ant queen from the cave. I don't think it's ever hit the field. Picked up more and more 2 drops, but the really lucky thing, the thing that got me through the first boss, was I got lucky on totems too. There was a double totem before the first boss, and I had to take the first totem, and reptile came up, so I grabbed that because I have the skink. My skink roach is my key card. Um, Even if I had more of another type of thing, I would have gone for reptile because that's the card I've set up fair hand mechanics such that I'm drawing it every game. And it's the card I'm going to play most because it has the replay mechanic. Anyway, and I got on the second one, I got Death Touch. So suddenly I had a way to beat the boss, even though I didn't have great items at the time, and a way to continue beating other fights. Then it was huge. I got early map 2. I got a campfire that was a plus on attack that gets the skink up to 2-2, which is enormous, both for stabilizing fights early, but it also means the tails it leaves behind are 1-2 tails, but with Death Touch, which is just obviously incredibly valuable. And from there, it was just kind of pick up more 2 drops, try to avoid 1 drops. If I do get a 1 drop, get rid of it at first opportunity. I got stuck with a wolf cub from something, and I managed to get rid of it. And by managed, I mean I always immediately had squares that would resolve any problems the deck had. This was a very, very lucky run, but also the Skink Roach is a great card and a great build. I prefer it to the Beehive, the Undying Beehive, because that one you kind of just lose to flying, and so you need to get lucky to not face flying in scary spots. Well, the Skink, because it can output damage, is better there. My favorite of the Undying setups you can get early is the Undying Warren, but actually a few runs before my last one, I saw the Undying Warren to start, and I thought, can I take it? Because I have 0 power in the egg deck. In other decks, the vanilla deck, oh my god, I jump on that. But in the egg deck, can I take it? And I knew I had an item place in my first choices, so I knew I could grab a 2-2 pack rat, and I thought, okay, I can take the Undying Warren, and if I can survive the first fight with the pack rat hitting and maybe the items, then I'm okay. But it wasn't enough to beat the first fight. Maybe I played the first fight badly, but I think it just, with the things I saw, it wasn't enough. Like, if you had gotten the Wild Bull and Double Rabbit fight, it could have killed the Wild Bull if you place it right, and then you probably have the win. Like, if they play something else that fight, it's usually not a 2-power thing. So, if I had gotten lucky on what the first fight was, I think that would have been a great run, because the Undying Warren is incredible. The fact that it just creates, essentially immediately, infinite resources to put stuff out and can block any lane is remarkably powerful. It doesn't have the damage output of the Skink Roach, but it's the best of these kind of setups. But I think the Skink Roach is the second best, and I'm glad I got one during this run. But this was just a stupidly lucky run. There was no point where, like, just as I was about to run into a serious problem, it gave me exactly whatever I needed to resolve that problem. So it's not a run I'm, like, proud of or like, yes, look at how well I played with the egg deck. No, this was, I repeatedly got into problems, and then the game was like, oh, you have a problem? Here's the perfect thing, and then the perfect thing after that. That said, the Skink Roach is a great build, and I like the 3 core Undying builds. There's probably more than 3, but those are the 3 1-drops that come to mind. Like an Undying Wolf Cub or an Undying some other 1-drop that's like pretty decent. The Cuckoo's great. I showed a Cuckoo run previously. So maybe Cuckoo should be a 4th But the Skink, the Beehive, and the Warren are similar because they're all here is an Undying 1-drop that creates free things for me to use to both be able to play this again without needing squirrels and to be able to play other stuff. And the Cuckoo doesn't have that same effect. It's very good with Undying, but it doesn't have the same effects as these three. And these three are all fun builds. And I haven't gotten an Undying Warren run here, but in fact, I don't think I got. I mean, I've done an Undying Mantis God, but that's again a different kind of build. But I'm glad to have gotten one of the three Undying and make stuff, and then you just block up a lot of lanes and eventually have time for your other cards to come through and win. So it doesn't really matter what the rest of these cards are as long as they're 2-drops and can output some damage. Like the River Snapper sucks. It does have Death Touch because I happen to have Death Touch, but like obviously these other cards, stuff with 2 power and 2+ cost is really desirable. Well, this is my first Ant deck run that went well. I did a bunch of really unsuccessful ones here. I'm always torn between two things with the Ant deck. Do you just get rid of all the ants or as many as you can? Or do you try to get basically an insect totem? You need so much item health. I got so much item luck throughout this run. I ended up getting rid of the ants here. I put Mantis on a Wolf. I think that was my opening 2 cards was Mantis and Wolf. I'm not sure they were the first thing I combined, but I think they were. The Pack Rat is always a nice pickup. I tried to get rid of the River Snapper, and then I got a bunch of cockroaches, and I put them on cheap stuff as I got rid of the ants. It's not an amazing cuckoo. It's not, the tadpole is sacrificial fodder, and then I filled up with 2-drops. I ended up getting multiple corpse maggots from the cave, which created this goofy card. Also got this black goat, which is very nice. You can block up a spot, for instance, for the wolf, and then sack into the wolf. You can block up a spot and then just occupy other squares. I just put pronghorns on the grizzly just now. Hopefully that helps with the final boss. I'm a little worried. I think I should have enough damage, but like, it's a pretty uncomfortable deck. So this first attempt, I ended up essentially expunging ants from the deck. And maybe we'll get one where I get a totem going. But either way, it feels so luck-based. Like, a lot of runs are luck-based. There are runs where you make no mistakes, you make good decisions. Like, I'm very confident I made right decisions, and you just lose. Like, the items don't come, and you just never saw the tools to beat the first boss. Or, like, just fundamentally, you were never going to have a build that beats a certain kind of fight if you happen to get an unlucky opening hand. There are lots of games I lose where I'm like, I probably made some small mistakes, but the reason I lost was not because of them. And there are other games I lose because of my mistakes, of course. But with a deck like this, but with most decks, or with at least the better 5 decks, not so much the egg deck, though the egg deck, you have some tools, but with the top 5 decks, which are, actually Mantis feels pretty luck-based to me, but especially with vanilla, 0 cost, and bones, I usually feel like I had a chance. Like, sometimes I didn't, but it feels like I do. It feels like I have something to play for. It feels like if the next tile comes right, I'm in good shape. And with this, it feels like I need, 4 tiles in a row to come right. Like, I need every, campfire to give the right result, though this wasn't campfire reliant. But it just feels like that kind of thing, where I need to win every coin flip. And if you're campfire dependent, it's often you need to win double coin flips. And those runs just feel so like, is RNG going to be kind to me? No? Alright, on to the next run. And that's why why my favorite decks are 0, Vanilla, and Bones. With I think Vanilla now my favorite. It doesn't force you in a direction. It does have 2 1-drops, which is a pain. But I've come to really like the Wolf card. I think it's just 3 power at 2 cost. Hits a lot of really valuable breakpoints if you happen to get a way to give it double, or get it up to 4. Suddenly, a wrench and a kill can get you past grizzlies. It just feels like tools in a nice way. So yeah, this deck is a deck, and I got very lucky to get it. And I do like the wolf. The wolf was probably obviously, the cuckoo and the tadpole did work. The tadpole more so. But the wolf was a really nice card to close out fights. If I got it on the field, I often had an egg somewhere on the field and so I could usually get it out safely. Very important with the cuckoo to make sure the egg was in one of the middle two lanes, so that if I draw the wolf later, now of course if there was a major threat in an edge lane, I'd have to block that one instead. But being careful about that was reasonable. Also, you tend not to want it on the far left because I have the bell ringer kraken, so I don't want that lane blocked up. Though occasionally you put it somewhere knowing you can overkill that lane and pick off the thing behind it in a safe way. So, there's some interesting play decisions there. And a goofy corpse maggot. An enjoyable little card that didn't come out very much. So I failed many, many runs with the ant deck getting here, but I was really trying to get a totem deck to work and I just couldn't get the luck. And then as soon as I stopped focusing on totems, the totem deck came to me. So early on, I went to totem places, I got insect, and I got the skink ability. Now, the only reason I kept going was because I was forced to take the first one, and insect was an option. And I know the deck has a lot of cards that are going to pay off insects, and I had also taken beehive at the start. I don't remember what card I took with it. Maybe it was Magpie that I moved over to the Flying Ant. And this ended up setting a lot of really grindy fights. I made sure to get +1 on the Beehive because I knew I'd... no, I took Beehive and Field Mice, which is where I got Fecundity. I knew I was going to be playing this a lot, and I also didn't want to just die to flyers, so I think it's worth grabbing the +1 power to try to make this a win condition, essentially. Because each time this makes a bee, the bee has Fecundity. And so the bee makes another bee. That one doesn't have Fecundity, but also it has, because I got the skink totem, all my ants, or all my insects, if I play them, they can dodge, leave behind a tail, and hopefully I can use that to start getting out more expensive stuff. I got the magpie on the mantis late, on the flying ant pretty early. I ended up getting 3 magpies this run, which is nuts. The cave gave me this pronghorn, which has been genuinely very useful. Elks turn into moosebucks if you didn't know that elks can evolve not into elder elks, but into moosebucks. I think this is the second time I've had that, so it wasn't a new find. This was another cave. But the mealworm has really been a star of the show and helpful for getting out the 1-drops, especially before I cleared out some 1-drops. I had like a ringworm I got stuck with for a while and some stuff like that. Now you might say, why would you ever get stuck with a ringworm? Well, it was ringworm, otter, or kingfisher, and I took the ringworm. Maybe that was the wrong choice, but I stand by it. But the mealworm meant I could power stuff out and power it out with +2 health, which was really nice. This I got from a pickaxe. And Ants is one of the decks where you actually don't need to avoid the pickaxe at all costs. Because if you do happen to get into an insect theme and you do want insects, pickaxe is a guaranteed gold pelt or insect with a bonus ability. And often that's high risk because it might be a 1-drop that screws stuff up. Because it has an added ability it's hard to get rid of. You can't do it at sacrificial altars. But if you're just trying to mass up insects, it has real upside. So I thought that was neat. I moved the skunk onto this mud turtle. I always get mud turtles. That's just how I play. Picked up the direwolf and direwolf pup at some point. I used items to beat the first and third boss, but actually beat the second boss clean without items, just kind of making a wall with the beehive, slowly picking down lanes with the elk and the direwolf, and a little help from the pronghorn. But I could just block up lanes for so long, because fundamentally, think I play the beehive, right? The beehive gets hit, it dodges the first hit, it leaves something behind. That can block a lane. Then it gets hit by the second grizzly. Now, it pops out a bee, and it does die. Though it doesn't die if I used the mealworm to get it into play. It survives that hit, in which case it'll pop out another bee. Each bee I play can block 2 lanes. Because it's in a lane, the first attack it will dodge, leave behind a tail to block, the second lane it blocks, and each bee I play makes a second bee. The first bee makes a second bee. And then, of course, I have a second beehive to play. So I could slowly just block a ton of lanes. Now, I had to be a bit careful because the moosebuck, which the elk evolves into, has annoying movement. So you couldn't quite block up all those lanes if you needed the elk to stay in a specific lane. So I'd usually let the elk move once and take a hit from a grizzly, and then slowly work down the other stuff, just to make it a little cleaner on my card plays. But fundamentally, the idea of this is I get out an ant or a mantis or some insect turn 1, beehive ideally, but the other cards work. Even the porcupine isn't the end of the world, though I kind of wish I'd gotten rid of that. It would be a little cleaner of a deck. You get out one of these on turn 1, and they dodge a hit, move to the side, and hopefully that gives us enough sacrificial stuff to get rolling Very defensive deck. It was pretty fun for me to play. I like playing decks like this. Um, Great beehive deck. Definitely my best beehive deck of these runs. And nice to get an insect themed deck. Winning with the ants is really rough. The first time I did it by getting rid of all the ants and moving into, I think it was Skink Roach. That feels like so long ago. It's been many days and a fair number of runs each day failing since I last put this together. So yeah, I like this deck. This deck felt nice to run with. Um, I create a lot of little value and eventually it adds up. Um, and that was enough to again beat the second boss without help from items. I did get really lucky on items. I got an hourglass and scissors, had to use them in the next fight, and then had an item right behind it that gave another hourglass and scissors. So insane luck on items, good luck on the totems coming early. I didn't get skink and insect on the first two totem spots. It took me 3 totem spots to get it going, but I saw 3 pretty early. Because I got the first one at the start of map 1, and at the end of map 1, there was a double totem option as at the end of the path, and I took it, and I got lucky on the second one. Um, so this is the kind of insect themed deck to go with my get out of ants deck. And I think those are the 2 main ways to play this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some way to play it that's a lot better. I have no claim to be a great ant deck player, or even a great player at all. But like, I definitely have no claim to be great at handling the ant deck. These are kind of the 2 strategies I've come up with. This one is so random whether the stuff comes. But the thing is, the worse a deck is, the more you have to like swing for home runs, the more you have to get lucky, right? If a deck is really good, then you don't need to take all these coin flips because the deck is going to give you tools. But if a deck is really bad and your odds are really low, then like a 1 in 10 chance you dramatically improve your deck, if that's the biggest improvement you can get, might be the best for your odds of winning. And so I think rushing totems is a reasonable strategy if you have a very low win rate on this deck, which I do. So I think it's possible that there's better ways to play this where you don't have to as often be reliant on totems. But for me, I think rushing totems is a viable way to play the ant deck. Now, I do think the first deck I made out of this was better. If you can move off ants entirely, that's possible. So I guess the ideal would be ready to go in either of those 2 directions. If you see a lot of sacrificial altars and stuff, then you want to be moving into, or maybe campfires, you want to be moving into the, I can move out of this deck into a new deck, and hopefully I can get it up and running in time. If you see a lot of totems, you go, okay, hopefully I get an insect totem or a really nice ability early, and I can get that up and running by the first boss. And you're also going to need item luck. You're going to need to grab items either way and have something that can beat the boss with a little item help. I had like Mantis plus some ant stuff, and I had an hourglass ready, and it just all just barely came together to beat each of the bosses. But it was a close call, except for the second one, which I beat really clean, and the third one, which I should have beat clean, but screwed up the opening stage too. We don't want to talk about it. All right, that's enough babble about this stuff.
All right, I'm finally done with ants. Here's the deck. I got another totem early, and again I got the skink boost afterwards. A couple totems later, I went to a lot of totems this run. I have the canine head, I have the elk head, and I have the insect head. But anyway, mainly I got skink on insects, and I have 2 1-drops. I just gave the flying ant Undying just now, but the Mantis has had it for a while. I only just mycologist the Mantis, but the 1/1 Mantis, I wasn't keeping it reliable as a one as a fair hand mechanic. It wasn't my only 1-drop. I had a tadpole for a bit. I've had this flying ant forever, and it didn't have unkillable. So I wasn't abusing fair hand mechanic very well. I couldn't really get rid of the cards, but I got lucky draws and skated through. This was not a deck that beats the game reliably the way I ran it. But I'm not sure I had better choices. Just yeah, I mean, this was very sketchy. I got the Direwolf Pup to a 2/1, and with some item help was able to beat the first boss. I think I took the Corpse Maggot and the Direwolf Pup at the start, saw Grizzly, took it, put the Corpse Maggot on it, but that made it harder for me to get rid of 1-drops because I had spent time on the Sacrificial Altar on higher cost stuff, so maybe it is my fault I ended up having the fair hand mechanic problem. I was just excited to get a Corpse Maggot on the Grizzly. The mealworm I got from a gold pick again with the ant tech. You don't really need to avoid gold picks, though it can screw you. Um, and then the core of the deck is this is basically a skink roach deck, right? Because I basically have the skink effect on undying things, so the stuff they leave behind is also has Undying, and that can let me power out whatever I need. And the rest of the cards are kind of sort of random. Like the key of the deck was the Mantis. I tried to get rid of the Flying Ant so many times. You'll see it has 7 toughness. That's because I did 2+2s to try to get it killed at a campfire, but it didn't. And then I had to take 2 more Flying Ants when I had no choices between 1-drops, so I took the 1-drop easiest to get rid of, which I thought was the flying ant due to mycologists. So this flying ant is actually 3 flying ants stuck together. Uh, yeah, the antics are rough, but I ended up getting into skink totems twice here, and that ended up being really great for this deck. Some decks you want like death touch because totems, because that gives you bosses easier. But the skink really worked here because you have a lot of insects, and if they can keep producing enough stuff, like undying on these insects alone would not be so good, right? Because the problem with the ants is you keep having to pay to put them out, right? And it's just so hard to kind of curve out naturally and keep paying for them and not just run out of stuff. But the skink, rather than something like undying, or even fecundity, because fecundity just gives you more stuff you have to pay for, gives you stuff that actually pays for it, and I think works really well with the ants. And while it's kind of weird that the only 2 good abilities I ever got off ants off the totems in a lot of runs here. No, I once got bifurcated strike. That was a weird deck. I made it to the 3rd boss and then lost that run. That was a depressing run. Um, and there was a couple other interesting runs that made it deep, but not quite here. But I don't think it's like, I mean, it's luck, but it's not entirely a coincidence that 2 of my successful runs here were on the skink totem, because just the difficulty with these insects and these ants is they don't, cost wise, they don't really function well as a deck, at least on Skullstorm. So I'm pleased to be done with ants. I'm dreading starting with the goddamn Kingfisher deck, but, you know, here's one last ant deck for the road.
Well, after absolutely struggling horribly with ants, I actually rolled with the waterborne deck pretty quickly. I ended up getting rid of both of the Kingfishers. I failed at the first campfire to get rid of one, but the second campfire got rid of it. I ended up picking up a lot of campfires this run, and the other one I got rid of to a Bone Lord space. I moved a Magpie over to the Great Kraken, and suddenly our basic problems were resolved. I also got a Sacrificial Altar early, and my first 2 cards, I took this Kraken and the Dire Wolf to make it my win condition for bosses. And this was actually pretty good even when I still had the Kingfishers in my deck, because as long as my deck was pretty small, I could play a Kingfisher or 2 until I draw this. My Kingfishers won't die, so they will be sacrificial fodder when I need to bring this out. Then the key was, I don't know why it's showing it last because I got it pretty early. At the first cave, I got this unbelievable raccoon. It's basically a Warren combined with Fecundity, which is an incredible card. If you have not used such, you sacrifice an Aqua Squirrel to get out your Warren usually, to get out your Warren, and that makes a bunny. However, when you play the bunny, it makes another bunny because that bunny comes with Fecundity, and you can play that bunny to play your backup Warren because the Warren makes a second Warren, and that will make 2 further bunnies. So you end up creating a total of, for 1 cost investment, 4 bunnies and another 1 cost thing. So if you're going to play that to get the extra bunnies, you're basically up 3 bunnies, and you have a sacrificial thing on board, and one of those bunnies is to get a 4th thing. So really, you're kind of up like 4 sacrificial. I might be countering wrong; it might be 3, but you are up an incredible amount of sacrificial options, power. So basically, I get this card out, and then I can play one of my 2-drops, ideally this, or this Field Mice that I just buffed massively. I had a Skink, but I realized I needed to keep my 1-drops to just the Raccoon and these Great Krakens. I duplicated a Great Kraken at Goober. And so I needed to not have 1-drop, so I needed to move the Skink somewhere, and Skink plus Field Mice is a great combo. And then I just kept getting +1s on attack, and I didn't know where to put it. My Great Krakens tutor something, and then I get rid of them. My raccoon, I'm sacrificing. These are the core cards of the deck, but I'm not using them for power. Adder, power doesn't make much of a difference. I just had some random adders lying around. These I got late. Ant Queen can't take it. Red Heart can't take it. Red Heart sucks, by the way, but I, didn't want to take a 1-drop, so I got stuck with it. Bellringer can't take it. Mealworm, don't care. So I just kept putting it on the field mice, because also it boosts the skink tail it makes. And I've never actually had it get hit, because, it hits for a lot of damage, and usually I just win with the Kraken. Again, I have a lot of, with the Bellringer Kraken, because my giant great Krakens do a lot of tutoring. This was just a great deck. Very clean deck. It would look cleaner if you got rid of the Adder, Red Heart, Wolverine, and Opossum, but they've basically never seen the field. And Ant Queen barely has either. Just a really good Bellringer Kraken. This is a nice combo. Giving it the +2 to health was... I hit so many campfires this run. Giving it the +2 to health was to make sure it could solo the Grizzlies if needed. If I didn't have items. I always did have items, and I never tried to... Sometimes I try to finesse it where I don't use my items if I don't think I need to, and I try to save them for the next area. But here I played it like simple, safe. Now you can usually do that pretty safely. Like you can think, am I going to lose my win condition next turn? No? Okay, I'll play another turn and see where we're at and see if we want to use the items. But I didn't think I was ever in a particularly good situation to do so. But this can beat the Grizzlies as long as you can block up the other lanes, because it hits for 8 the first turn, which kills the first Grizzly and 2 to the next, and then it gets hit for 4, and the second turn it kills the Grizzly and does 4 to the face. And then it's doing 8 a turn. So giving this +2 health was nice. I really like... I'm sort of torn between what's a better card, Direwolf or Direwolf Pup, because for a lot of decks, Direwolf Pup is a better win condition for the bosses, right? Like, you give it +1 power, it can do 6 once it becomes a Direwolf, or if you have a Wrench, it's 4 is enough if you get a kill item. It gives you a chance to beat the bosses if items come right. And it's usually more affordable and easier to get on the field on the first phase of a boss than the Direwolf is. But the Direwolf, you can move over to any 3 or 4 power thing. The Wild Bull, not a great option because it's hard to control, but a Wolf or the Bellringer Kraken are just great options. Those are the 2-cost stuff with the least downside that giving Double Strike is just fantastic for. And this deck gets it out really easily because that Raccoon is incredible. Yeah, one of my better decks here, and off the stupid Kraken deck. Really pleased with this, no longer quite so much dreading. After how long I took getting the ants done, getting 3 wins, more wins on the ants, because I was doing new runs for each of this, so I couldn't use like my old ant run victory. I was really worried about this, and now I'm less worried. And one reason I'm less worried is, unlike ants, you can campfire away the Kingfishers more easily, right? Because you can get rid of them on +1 or on +2s, on attack or health. And if the attack comes good, then there's suddenly 3 1s, and like if you can get bifurcated strike on that or double strike, like you're doing great things potentially if you get your Kingfisher up to 3-1. And also the Mycologist, if you get that far, gives you a way to get rid of one of them. And while they are terrible, the fact that they don't die means if you do have high impact 2-drops, you can usually get them out, because your Kingfisher will hit for a turn, and then you're comfortable sacrificing it, because what is this garbage? And so you really want to have like nice 2-drops to move into, and this double strike Bellringer Kraken was just wonderful. And here's where Direwolf was a much better pickup than Direwolf Pup would have been, because Direwolf I can move its superpower over to another card. So yeah, really good deck. I'm not at all worried about the final boss on this one, which I was on some of the ant ones. And also, this was not a very hard deck to run through the game with. So I don't think I'll get a deck quite this good again, my Raccoon being that beautiful Fecund Warren, which is, Undying Warren and Fecund Warren are both, like, single-handedly win conditions. Okay, you do need something that can do damage, but they can just create so many resources that, as long as you have anything to put out, they're incredibly powerful effects. The Undying Warren can block up all lanes, because as soon as it creates a bunny, that is Undying, and you can just block up lanes because you create more and more Undying bunnies. The Fecund Warren, there are more ways to lose because it can't block up the board infinitely, but it also creates its essentially mana quicker. And if you have nice targets, which I do, then it goes great. So very fun deck here, and I'm really pleased with this one because again, I was very worried about this. All right, second deck makes it through with the stupid Waterborne deck. Man, this one was a struggle. I decided to start the video slightly earlier. I'm not sure why. You can see how slow it runs when I'm recording. But you've seen that before. All right, we have to take a 2-drop here. We can't take a 1-drop. Let's take the thing with a little more power. Because we can't interfere with our 1-drop setup. Move on to the final map. I have a Bleach and a Boulder left over. Not the best items going in. I probably could have reset them and drawn items here, but let's look at the deck and make a decision together. So basically, Magpies saved the initial cards. I got rid of one Kingfisher. I tried to get rid of the Kraken. Plus power on the Kraken is very bad because it is erased once it does its transform. I was just trying to get rid of it. I'd put Magpie on the Kingfisher. Maybe that's an argument for putting Magpie on the Kraken first, because Kingfishers are easier to get rid of because you can mycologist them together. And if they do get power, they have some use while Kraken does. So it probably screwed up the ordering there. You should probably put Magpie or the useful ability on the Kraken, not the Kingfisher. So that was a mistake. But the basic idea is I Magpie up Black Goat, and Direwolf. Hopefully survive long enough to get that out. It was a 3-5 Direwolf for most of the game, but got a mycologist into Goobert sequence at the end and picked up a 2-5 as well that I had put Corpse Maggot on. I didn't put Corpse Maggot on the 3-5 because the Trapper wasn't the first boss, so I needed to be careful about when the 3-5 came out, but by then they had combined and it was a very easy Trapper. But you want to be careful about that because if you put Corpse Maggot on all your big cards, sometimes against Trapper you cannot control when or where they come out, and they may die before the second phase due to the traps. And so you have to be very careful on applying Corpse Maggot before you've taken out the Trapper as a boss. Afterwards, go wild with it. And that's basically it. Possum, I just moved the item to something cheap. The Alpha was useful once, but it's basically just 2 tutors, a Black Goat, and a Direwolf, and then I got a Direwolf again from Goobert, so that was great. The other cards have basically not seen play. There was one fight I got... I had to use items, I thought. I got a Bifurcated Strike Ant Army deck coming down that was very scary, and I used an Hourglass and just ended it turn 1. Normally, I mean, a lot of time you have turn 1 kills, but I didn't there. But I ended it before they got a turn because I didn't think I could risk it. So it's not a perfect deck or anything, but this was a pretty good deck to move into. Basically, you turn the initial terrible cards into tutors, and then you're good. Oh, and what we're going to do. We don't really have a great use to get from the Sacrificial Altar. There's, like, nothing we're super excited to move or feel need to move. I never found a good ability for my Black Goat. I probably should have put the item there because I play it a lot more than the Opossum, but I wanted to leave it open. So we're not going there. Items, we don't need a Pack Rat. We don't have anything to turn in. Yeah, so we have a lion head and a bird head. So if we see anything here, we can put it on, and we can pick, do we want it on a tutor, or do we want it on a target? And the answer is we got nothing. That's a bummer. Well, you could do funny things there. I think I'll put it on the wolf head, and I'll use the apple on the canine head, because this means if my direwolf gets low on life, I can sack it and keep the stats. It won't have double strike, but it means for the final boss, that's actually kind of fun. Like, I could hit with the 5-10 a few times. It gets down to a 5-2, and I sack it into Elk, and suddenly Elk is a 7-6, or, whatever. Something like that. Oh, that's a fun combo. I don't think I've ever had that combo before. Alright, congrats to me. I am almost done with this project, which is a ridiculous project to get into, because who wants to have to beat the Waterborne deck 3 times, not even including the prior time I beat the Waterborne deck. But I'll eventually make it through. Alright, our third and final run with the stupid Waterborne deck. I got this hilarious wolf. I put a Mantis on it, and I got another wolf with the egg and the eat ability. And anyway, it just grows. And I have a canine totem with the evolve thing. So it takes stuff. And it grows. And that's pretty fun.
We'll look at the rest of the deck in a moment. I just thought I'd include the end of this fight because I'm never going to have a 12-2 Elder Wolf again, you know? So that's good fun for everyone. Anyway, this deck isn't great. It's like, it's not, it has some amazing cards, but I never set it up to draw them reliably. And I've had just enough items to scrape through the fights because the deck's almost great, but not great. Wow, this is running slow. You can do it. You can do it. All right, let's see what cards we got. Nope, thank you. No, thank you. We can't take one drops. Um, All right, we'll take another Lammergeier. That'll be damage eventually. Anyway, let's look at our deck and make our final choice. Decided to show that. Ooh, one thing I haven't talked about for this deck that's pretty important is when looking at items. This is a terrible deck to show it because I don't have Kingfishers. Because Kingfishers have flying, because your deck innately has some flying power. One thing you should do is take Bleach with higher priority than normal, because Bleach is more likely than usual to be able to get damage past the Grizzlies. For instance, if you go to a campfire and there's +1 attack and you try to get rid of a Kingfisher and you end up with a 3-1 Kingfisher, with Bleach, that's already pretty close to a kill on the Grizzlies. So, one thing I haven't mentioned is prioritize Bleach. It's a little more valuable in this deck. Alright, what's good about this deck? This Great Kraken kind of sucks because the Kraken's bad. This Dire Wolf isn't helped, but obviously it's a Dire Wolf. It's pretty good if you can get it out. Mealworms, whatever. Pack Rat's nice to have. The stars of the show are the Raven Egg and the Warren. I had the Warren first. Oh, and obviously the wolf is great. I wish I'd combined my dire wolves, but I thought putting this wolf together was more important. Okay, I had the Warren first. I got Fecund Warren very early. They might have been cards I saw from the initial trader. I will say I started resetting the trader rather than failing runs until I saw something at least vaguely pleasant. But that meant more of my runs had nice starts. I would not do this if I was trying to find my win percentage with various decks, but I did it because I wanted to win 3 times and be done. So I started with the Fecund Warren, which is obviously great because you get basically 4 rabbits and 2 warrens. And then at a cave, I got this goofy warren with the egg, but it actually meant you could cheese some fights pretty well. Because if you can drop it turn 1, you can block a lane, and then you can drop your other warren because of Fecund and block another lane, and just immediately shut down some dangerous fights. And you've also made rabbits, and they have the egg too, so you could block all 4 lanes and draw however long you want. Of course, if you land a raven egg, you'll probably on average land 1 there. You have to deal with the raven, but you can very much shut down some dangerous boards. Incredible card. And the other star is this raven egg, which, lands on the board. If hit, you get a B, which makes another B. And if it lasts a turn, it becomes a raven, which is great. Oh, and it makes another raven egg, which also will make Bs. Incredible card. Love the cave. The cave is so good. The wolf, the raven egg, and the warren are 3 of the 4 best cards in the deck. And of course, the dire wolf is the 4th. The mantis was useful. I had 2 mantises. One was part of this wolf now. But the mantis did give me a kill. I had the kill either way because I had multiple items, but it meant I could save an item while getting a kill using like Eternity Clock, the dire wolf, and the mantis to do the 5 damage. Mantis is a very useful card. It screws up. Of course, I wish I didn't have the Great Kraken and the Mantis. I wish I had moved those abilities or just gotten rid of them. But I had other things I needed to get rid of when I got to get rid of squares, and I had to pick up a lot of 1-drops this run that were forced on me. Because I'd love to always start with the Raven Egg and the Warren. They can very comfortably power out high-cost cards. Anyways, that's the deck. So we could get rid of 1, but I think I should take the item refill. We could try to improve the totem, but the evolved totem on the canines is pretty nice. It means my dire wolves can hit for 6, which is great. I did only get it just recently, and as you saw, the wolf beat the boss, not the dire wolf, so I haven't used an elder dire wolf. But I think you got to pick up items here. I think with no items, we do have a pack rat, but items are just such a valuable thing. Bleach is so good, and probably the clock here. It's a case for scissors, but I think it's just the clock. Just having an extra turn is so useful. It's the only thing that can apply to the final part as well. I don't have any Death Touch, I don't think. But still, Bleach is great on the final part, but I'm happy to use Bleach earlier. I don't think I'll have a problem doing 80 damage. Maybe I will. 2 Dire Wolves, each of them do like 12 before they die. That's 24. The Wolf, if it gets there, does 24 as well. That's 48. Could be tight. I don't really have much other damage. But I think the Hourglass is very useful there. Yeah, I'm going to take the Hourglass here. I think the third phase is the trickiest for this deck. Usually, I think the time you lose to the final boss is the first phase. The first phase is kind of there's stuff coming down, and if you take a little too much damage from the 1/8s, then the 2/3 flyers kill you. So I think that's the hardest phase, and so it's good to use your items there if needed. The second phase usually is just the 1/8s and is like pretty manageable. It's just making sure you don't lose too many resources. I might be low on resources on this deck. This might be a tricky final boss. Hope it isn't. But that said, if it is, then you won't see this because I'll have lost. I just realized as I started this fight an important touch to add. The Bleach, I think of the Bleach on the final boss as letting you hit it with Death Touch because I usually don't have flyers. This deck has lots of flyers. I have the Raven Eggs. Bleach is an easy win on the final form, so I should look to save the beat Bleach and use the Hourglass as my strategy. I haven't talked much about final boss strategy, but in a deck with Death Touch or Flying, Bleach insta beats the final boss. It still beats it here by just making it hit one square, right? Then you can just damage in the other squares forever. So if I can save the Bleach, it's pretty easy, but this deck does make it easier by being Flying.